Hi, and welcome to BTS Podcast. I'm your host, Lene Cook. BTS is exploring the behind the scenes of a variety of careers across different verticals. On this particular episode, I'm super excited to have on stand-up comedian Jessica Michelle Singleton. Obviously, it's a funny episode because she's a funny person. She talks about what it means to be a stand-up comedian, kind of the roller coaster of her life. She also talks about what it was like for her applying to, being accepted to, and then fully carrying out her one-woman show at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. So if you're somebody who is interested in that, if you've toyed with the idea of performing there, she offers just some really great advice. I was there with her for the first 2 weeks, and she just has a lot of great insight to offer. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. The music you're hearing on this podcast is by Benjamin Betharam. I'm super excited to have his music on here. He's really great at what he does. You can look at, well, I guess not look at, you would be listening to. You can listen to more of Benjamin's work at soundcloud.com/Betharam. That is spelled BETHURUM. Thanks so much. If you're liking what you're hearing on this, share it with hashtag BTS Podcast. Feel free to tag Jessica and myself. We are, well, not we have two separate handles. I'm at Lene Cook, which is spelled Lynae, Cook, like the noun or verb, whichever you decide. Jessica is at JMS Comedy across Instagram and Twitter. She's really great. Enjoy the episode. Let me just make sure it doesn't loop after these 4 bars. Good. Okay. Yay! Awesome. So I am here with Jessica Michelle Singleton for BTS. Jessica is a really good friend and
Yay!
and an incredible stand-up comedian. I was lucky enough to go with her to Edinburgh Fringe Festival and catch her show there, which was amazing. And a total...
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. And it was definitely like a departure from her normal stand-up. So we're going to talk today... It's going to be like a 2-part thing where we talk about the behind the scenes of what it means to be a stand-up comedian, and like all the work that you go into making stand-up
happen.
Yeah. And then also I'd love to talk a little bit about the Fringe, because I think like the preparation you had to do for that immersive theater like production and was so different.
Oh yeah, it was so different. By the way, thank you again for... Lene will never talk about the things that she's done, but she was a huge help in making that get off the ground the first couple weeks.
That is very generous.
She's blushing and there's no one in here.
It's true. Yeah, and I think also, I imagine for anybody looking at going to the Fringe, that's also a super intimidating foreign experience.
Yes.
And so I think just learning, like, I think there's some like shared misery there that I think being honest about can help people.
Oh, for sure.
Work.
Where you're like, yeah, it's gonna be grueling. It's basically the underlying. I mean, I think it's a thing that most people, by the time they do it, they know from someone else who's told them, but
right,
you can never
hopefully
fully prepare.
Because...
It's what I imagine parenthood's like.
Oh God.
You can never fully emotionally prepare. Someone with a kid right now is like, fuck you and your stupid one-woman show. I'm like, it's my baby. I also neglected the show.
And I apologize for any traffic sounds. We are at this really great apartment, and it's lovely outside, and I'm not strong enough to confidently close this window.
Yeah, we're not fully sure we could get it reopened, and I just...
Yeah, and it's not her apartment.
It's my friend Megan's, and I feel like she would also, like, if we can't do it, Megan is a docile little lamb, and... She would be like, I guess I just die of heat in this apartment.
Right, yeah, there's that. And so if you want to hear what Silver Lake sounds like, now you know.
Yeah.
So I think maybe we can start off on the stand-up piece.
Okay.
There's this interview where I think it was like a New Yorker radio interview with Jerry Seinfeld, and David Remnick asks him, like, well, how long does it take you to prepare something like that? And Jerry Seinfeld responded with, well, that's like asking God how long it took to make an oak tree.
Yeah, which is also like, I've heard that before, and it's like, okay, relax. Like, you're comparing yourself to God when you're like, what is the deal with traffic? And you're like, I mean, don't get me wrong, Jerry Seinfeld's an amazing comedian, he's so funny, but it's like, okay. But, I mean, it's true, because I mean, like, a lot of times with jokes, they're never really done, so I guess that's a good way to put it, is that, like, like a tree. It's always growing and changing. It's like, okay, well, it exists, but it's not going to stay the same.
Right. And I guess I even thought of it in terms of like, oh yeah, you're right, because like the tree needs soil and all these like complex things in the soil. And as a comedian, like you need life experience.
Yeah, and that's
to have
like
anything to talk about.
Yes, well, that's the thing is that I guess it can be difficult is getting into stand-up. Most people when they start out, if they're very into it, you kind of have to dive all the way in and be like all or nothing. So you're dedicating all your time to stand-up comedy, and then it's like, oh, well, this isn't relatable to the general public. Because you see it sometimes in open mics. When you're coming up, it's that like you'll be at an open mic and people are working out material, but it's all very related to being a stand-up comedian, and it's like, yeah, that's funny to the comics in the room. Like, other people don't do this, and you sound out of touch and crazy. That's a good point, because I also think there's this great interview. I don't know if I sent it to you. I keep meaning to send it to you. It's with Tim Ferriss and Aisha Tyler, and she talks about... You mentioned it to me.
Yeah, and she talks about like how she kept her day job for a long time. Also, it's like a foundational thing, but I think about the comics who like, you know, made it big and then they got a little bit older, and then obviously when you're like a full-time stand-up comedian, there's like an element of life that like, of course they transition to talking about relationships and kids because that's the most relatable element of their life.
Yeah, because they don't have their day job anymore.
Right.
And it's like, what do you do? And now it's like I don't want to force life experiences. That's the thing too, is it's a thing that I notice with older comedians. Once they have, my wife, my kids, and it's, right. I'm not saying that in a way, it's like, oh yeah, we get it. But it's so funny when people have a kid, it's like, oh wow, you just, as a comedian, you're like, oh man, you just got like so much material. Like, look at Ali Wong. Both of her specials are her pregnant, and now all her material about being a mom, and just like, and Christina Pazitsky, it's just so funny, and I imagine even funnier to parents. Right. Which is a relatable thing. And then as a, like, for me, I'm like, I don't think I'm going to be a parent. Which there's a whole group of people that can relate to that. Yeah. But it's finding ways to have life experiences that I can then make relatable material without forcing. Because I almost do feel like I have to set aside time to be like, make sure you set aside time for life experiences, which sounds like a fucking sociopath. Like, oh, well, I can't. Sunday is when I do my life experiences.
Thank God you have an autoimmune disease.
Yeah, so relatable. It really is. I should do more material on it. I have started, and which is interesting, especially when you go into dark stuff. And you're like, I'm going to dive into this, and then people are like, I relate to that, and thank you for talking about this. But then you're like, oh. I get very in my head. I have for sure have some sort of identity crisis constantly going on. Like, I have identity issues, and I don't have a label for them, and that probably is a direct reflection of my identity issues, is that I absolutely hate labels, and I have this big fear of ever being a comedian is the only thing I've ever been comfortable with as a continuous label. Like, I've never gone like, I'm tired of this, don't sum me up by my job. But the idea of someone seeing a short set and being like, oh, you're the comedian that talks about depression, or you're the comedian that you're just dirty, and it's like, well, no, I have a lot of dirty material, but you saw one 15-minute set and I have a few hours of material, and it's all different. I get very like, I don't know. It's hard because so many people with comedy, a big part of entertainment in general, I think, is, quote, branding yourself. Right. And the closest I can come to thinking I have a brand is like, well, my brand is someone who's terrified of being branded. Because I'd like... Yeah, which is fair. Like, the idea of being summed up, I mean, it ties into, like, I have gender... I don't want to say gender identity issues, but like when people are like, I'm a woman, I'm a feminist, and I'm like, I have never wanted to be summed up by my gender, I don't want to be I'm a dirty comedian. I mean, right. I am 100%, but I think I have this fear of being summed up. Well, because people are so complicated, and branding is sort of a way of putting yourself in a box. It's also unfair to people because when you allow there to be like a easy to digest like boilerplate version of you or whatever, and you know, you see it happen with, obviously we've seen it happen with women for years and people of color for years, where it's like you get this in the media like an easy to digest, like, oh, that's like
what a Mexican family is like, or like, oh, that's what Black women are like.
You get summed up to like as if you're not a complicated human,
right? Like as if there's not layers of like context and feelings, and like, yeah, maybe you're stern in public, but you still go home and like dance around in your underwear and you crack jokes with your family and whatever.
Okay, well, you don't have to tell everyone my business.
I wasn't talking about you. I was definitely talking
about literally all of us. Right. Probably is like, if anyone has the opportunity to dance alone in their underwear, I think they do. Well, yeah, that's the thing is that to sell something, I think the industry side of things, to like pitch yourself, to sell yourself, it's theoretically better to be able to sum yourself up, you know, to have that boilerplate, to have that,
right?
I mean, what are three things that describe you, you know?
And I hate bringing up politics in general, but I went to this like this really great branding like day workshop that was awesome. And it was through it's like the School of Visual Concepts in Seattle, and it was this, you know what, I went to 2 in a row. One was like on branding, one was on something else, and so I can't remember which teacher I have. So I would love to give them a shout out right now. I'm like, oh, they were too close, and I blend my realities. But the guy, I want to say it was this guy, Devin, and he was talking about how it like really hurt him to his core when he saw the messaging framework that Hillary came out with versus what Trump came out with, because Hillary's brand of I'm with her like doesn't actually say anything.
No, I was like, who is in charge of this campaign?
Yeah,
is it a woman? Like,
yeah, totally. And and like, and what is that? It just wasn't enough to make anyone go like, oh, I know what she stands for. So and like to kind of
it's like the equivalent of like an I'm with the band t-shirt. It's like, what?
Right. You're converging like a whole big divergence of thought, and you're like distilling that down to something that is like a very loose statement.
Yeah, what is her? It's like we could someone have gotten behind that with like a creative agency and like made an acronym for her, maybe?
Yes, they could have.
Like, well, no, because I mean that shit was all over the place. And then, oh God, I mean,
the difficult part is that we know in our hearts, we obviously hope that people are voting with like the complex thought framework, but generally people are like, I just want you to, right? You hear people all the time, just give me the facts. And you're like, well, the facts are that like relations in the Middle East, you can't just say in a sentence.
Yeah, it's like you can't give, you can't bullet point this complex thing. Well, that's the thing too, is I want to believe that people are these free thinkers who will like fully examine situations, which also is like, as an artist, to sell yourself, there's the idea of like summing yourself up with a quick, here's what I am, but the best types of art, the best types of, in my opinion, come from complex.
Yeah.
I mean, because the real human experience, what we find really relatable is realizing that we're all like, have these fucked up thoughts, or like, we're not just this surface thing that you're trying to, you know.
Well, there's a relatability and specificity, and so by going really broad, you kind of like, everybody kind of gets it, but you also water it down a lot. And so I think like even
trying to like make it palatable,
exactly,
for the people who just don't want to have to think.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, who wants them?
Yeah,
I mean, I guess that's great if you're like Swiffer, then
you're like, great, clean it up.
Yeah.
But like when people go, I was on stage the other night. And I don't even know how this happened, because it is not a weird statement for me to say that I am not a political comedian at all. Right. I have my opinions. Every once in a while, when I get too deep in a dive on the news, I'll get a little crazy on Twitter, but no one goes, you know who's a great political comic? Absolutely not. But somebody brought up politics from the audience. I was doing a late night set at the Comedy Store in the original room, and someone's like, well, how do you, I said, I riffed something about Kanye, and then someone was like, well, how do you feel about Taylor Swift now coming out and finally giving her opinion on her politics?
Right.
And I was just like, if you're making your decisions on who to vote for based on what Taylor Swift said, I don't want you to vote.
Right.
Like, and that's fucked up, but it's like, if you're not giving me thought, if you're just like, well, what did Taylor say? But I think when people get so angry about, quote, the other side, whatever side of the spectrum they're on, how could you vote for this? How could you do this? People discount the fact that, most people aren't free thinking when it comes to politics. It's like, they just don't even want to take the time. I would gather, I mean, this is coming from nothing I've read, no statistical research, but if I had to just like spitball, I would say maybe 75% of the voting population are like looking out their window and going, well, what sign is in my neighbor's yard? What is the community doing? I'll just do that. product.
Yeah.
They must know what they're doing.
Yeah.
So whatever they see more of. I mean, it's the same with, it's advertising. I could go down
it's
a wormhole
everything,
of
right? Like, I think about
campaign funding, but
I think about how, like, when I used to manage that event production company, we were doing a lot of music events, and when dubstep started becoming a thing, at first I was like, what is this?
Yeah.
Like, whatever happened to, like, the thing, like, and I remember watching, like, because it was this party called Spin the Bottle, and I think it was on, like, Sunday or Monday nights in the summer, and it was like a high school kind of thing, but it was all, like, really good artists, so it was, like, Steve Aoki would do it, and, like bigger artists, you know what I mean?
Cool.
So, like,
yeah.
And they had really good lineups, and I think it was with, like, the Cobra Snake was doing it, and it was rad, and it was at the Roxy, but I remember the first time I saw, like, Glitch Mob, who we ended up working with a bunch, and people were, like, excited and dancing, and I was like, wait, how are you dancing?
What is this? Yeah.
Like, how do you even know how to move to such a thing? Because, like, I grew up, it was either, like, hip-hop, which you know how to dance to, or it was, like, pits, and it was just, like, you're just thrashing around in a pit.
But it's also you know how to dance because
like,
it's what you grew up with, I guess.
Right, and then I was like, but, like, if you just heard this on SoundCloud, then how do you know, like, I just didn't understand, but then eventually it becomes palatable and you get used to it, and I think it's the same with everything.
Yeah.
Where you see something, and if you see it enough, whether that's, like, political signs or whatever, eventually you figure, like, we went down a rabbit hole today a little bit on Prop 8 in California about dialysis. And it was my first thought yesterday, like we were talking about this morning, like when I heard the ads for it, and I was like, oh, but this ad about it is funded by dialysis, like, companies. So
who make money off of people's...
Right, of people's diabetes.
Yeah, it's like,
so they have
we need people to be dying.
Right, and I can almost tell you that, like, if the organization funding an ad is... Basically, I'm more likely to vote no if I know that a business, or, like, vote against whatever the business is saying.
Because it's like, oh, you're just doing this for profit.
Right. And
especially a health thing. Like, get fucked.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's insane. So I also just realized we just went on an insane tangent.
Well,
so let's, like, backpedal a little bit.
Oh, yeah, because I don't even know what we were talking about.
Because this is how all of our conversations go.
I mean, yeah, that's what podcasts are for.
It's true. It's my podcast. We'll do what I want.
Yeah.
Which is to tangent.
Which is to get back on task immediately.
Right.
I'm panicking. well, that's the thing you see with branding, too, with comedians, is, like, just one more thought, and then we can figure out where we left off. But, like, I see people who are getting things, but it's almost like they're very much selling themselves in a specific way, and it seems very fake to me. They're, like, it's very, like, one-dimensional, and I have enough social awareness, and, like, I'm good at, like, I don't know.
You're emotionally intelligent.
Yes, yeah. I have enough emotional intelligence that I know I could easily, and I think about doing it just as an experiment, but then I always pull back, and I'm like, I don't want to I could easily brand myself a specific way and just pander to an audience.
Yeah.
Which I see a lot of people doing, and it's working for them. Like,
totally.
They're getting commercial success, but I'm like, yeah, if I wanted to, I don't know, because there's times when I find myself almost, like, leaning into starting to do it, because, like, so much of my Twitter feed is comedians, and a lot of them are, I mean, it seems like a more liberal group of people in general, but so I'm like, you're fucking talking to an echo chamber, you want pats on the back for the fucking, like, oh, wow, you just pointed out a thing a million people have already pointed out.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, no, I literally saw someone once on stage, not ironically, not with a follow-up joke, go, clap if you think racism is bad, and I was like, get off stage. This is a comedy show. What are you doing? Like, of course people think racism is bad. Yeah. Like, what? But I'm like, oh, I could easily lean into that and just be like, I'm a feminist, and just have, like, feminist on my shirt, and it's like, I do everything I can to help people of color. I do everything I can to help women, of course, but when you're trying to make it your brand, I don't know.
It does, yeah.
Comedians are supposed to be complicated and examine things from all sides.
In the truest form, but that's also, like, when you're looking at, I mean, I think about how many decks I've looked at for influencers and stuff, and how many times, like, the nuance is just lost on a lot of people, where they're like, well, what are they really about? Well, if that's not a brunch blogger, we don't want to work with them. Or, like, if that's not, and you're like, okay, so you don't think that perhaps also people who do X, Y, and Z also like cocktails and would want to buy, you know what I mean? Or, like, whatever.
Yeah, that it can be multifaceted.
Yeah, and also, don't you think that if somebody is specifically a brunch blogger and you're, you know, like a liqueur brand or whatever, that maybe your product will get lost in that because they just talk about it all the time. And so if you can hop in on somebody who just doesn't talk about boozy brunches all the time,
then it's different. They're like, oh wow, this must be a big deal because this person doesn't talk about this a lot.
Right.
Yeah, because I go through sometimes, like, I have moments of envy for some people who are very, I want to say well-branded. Like, I have a friend who started...
Buttoned up. It's like a buttoned up type
Yeah,
thing.
but it's like, oh, you're not allowing people to see the complex sides of you. Like, I helped a friend, we're not even friends anymore, it doesn't matter, I shouldn't have said that, but like, come up with a merch plan for stuff, and it was so easy because she's like a character.
Right.
But I was like, oh, I can do that for some other people. I can't for the fucking life of me come up with something that screams me. You know what I mean? That people see it and they're like, oh, JMS, Jessica Michelle. And like, I sometimes envy that it's like, oh, that it's so easy for you to go, oh, just these crystals. And I can't fucking...
Yeah. No, it's really hard. But I think that's also sometimes when somebody's 100% that is their identity, and it almost makes me feel like they're avoiding developing other parts of their, like,
no, absolutely. It's like they're
and
capping
self.
and they're just...
Yeah.
I mean, the term basic is so gross, but it's like, oh, you're just choosing to be this one-dimensional fake thing for a public persona.
Which is easier. Like, I have toyed with it myself where I'm like, oh, if I just fully subscribe to this caricature,
yes,
it would be super easy and I wouldn't have to make as many... It's like the... You know, like the same reason why I wear black all the time. I'm like, oh, I just don't have to make decisions. I love wearing colors and I love doing all this stuff. But then, like, my purchasing options change, and then my packing options change, my laundry changes. Yeah. It'll just be easier for me to wear all black.
Like, I could just pretend to care about reality TV and, like, nothing else and be very passionate about it.
Yeah.
Or, like, whatever, you know, like, pop culture. And it's like...
As your own brand. And people, I get that all the time. And we talk about this on your podcast that I was on, where, like, people will be like... act as if I don't know or haven't thought about, like, oh, if I just stuck to a very clear perspective in my photography, that then I might get more stuff. And I'm like, yeah, but that's not
It'd be like, I'm not a one-sided thing.
Yeah, like, I'm happy to make a specific Instagram account or a specific website or whatever for this one project I'm doing. But like,
I do sometimes think about making a separate thing, and even giving it, like, a whole thing.
Yeah, not even related to me, just to see how it goes. And then I'm like, I don't have the dedication. Like,
no, it's like so much time to do a thing that you're like, I'm not that passionate about this one thing.
Right. So to backtrack a little bit, I would like to talk about in terms of how you land on, like, I heard you and Madison talking a little bit about how when you first started comedy and, like, having a 3-minute set, 5-minute set, whatever. Like, what was that first few sets like for you? Like, your first few times at doing stand-up, and, like, how did you prepare?
Okay, well, the very first time I started stand-up, I, for years, said I was going to be a comedian. Like, I was in college, I'm like, well, I'm going to be a comedian. I thought I, like, wanted to be on Saturday Night Live. Had no idea how to do it. I was not part of any type of improv group, doing sketches. I didn't understand anything.
Yeah.
Other than I was the funny girl in my group of friends. I was the funniest one in my sorority, which even now I'm like, it seems weird that I was in a sorority, but, like, it was also a group of women who you would be like, oh, you guys are just, like, normal, cool women, not the one-dimensional cookie-cutter thing that we think of sorority women or girls, whatever. But so we had things where we'd have to write variety shows. I'd always write those. We'd always win because they were funny. And by my, like, last semester or last year of college, I was like, I guess I should figure out how to do comedy. So I looked up an open mic because I was like, I don't know how to just be in sketches unless I have a group of people.
Right.
And I wasn't going to college for, you know, television acting or whatever the fuck.
Right.
Theater, anything.
Broadcast media or, like, whatever.
Yeah. So I was like, oh, some people on Saturday Night Live have been stand-up comedians, so I guess I'll try stand-up. And I just found an open mic. There's 2 comedy clubs in the city I was in. I looked it up, and then I wrote out, like, and I have very rarely done this since, I scripted a full set, and it was just about, it was like a characterized version of me, which I think a lot of people when they start, and even, like, throughout their career, some people maintain, which goes back to that whole branding thing, where it's like, what I wrote was about being, like, slutty and drunk, which were not false things. Like, I was in college. Excuse me as I burp on the podcast, but...
And as every parent is like, oh, God.
Yeah.
My daughter.
Well, it's just very much like you saw, like, at the time, Chelsea Handler had her show, and it was like, oh, she's, like, this bit of a mess. Amy Schumer, and it's like,
right.
Yeah, you could just lean into that one thing.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, I see Amy Schumer now, and it's, like, almost as if she's doing a rebrand. But, like, it's interesting because I remember seeing an article about her talking about gun violence at a show and people walking out. And it's like, yeah, no, like, you got blown up as the train wreck. Like, you know what I mean? It's like you were the drunk party girl. And then for you to go, like, how dare anyone call me a whore? And it's like, well, you can't brand yourself as a whore and be like, you know, oh, I'm such a drunk. And then it's very interesting for me to watch someone go, like, you can't. Don't say that about me. And it's like, well, that's what you told people you are.
Right.
That's why it's complicated. But nevertheless, I wrote out this whole thing. I had no idea, no concept of how long it would be. I wrote like 2 pages of typed out stuff. I stood in the chapter room of my sorority house, like, alone for like a whole week leading up to it, just reciting in front of a mirror and like practicing all my like movements. And I didn't time it because I had no concept of time. Like, I didn't know how, well, yeah, I mean, I still don't. But I didn't know how many minutes you get. And then, like, at this open mic, I didn't know about the light. So the light, which every once in a while, if you go to a lot of live comedy shows, you'll see comedians address it. And I've even done it. But it bothers me because because in my head, I'm like, people don't know what the light is. When you're like, I'm getting the light. It's like the general audience is like, what are you talking about?
Right. Because
from the back of the room, when your set's about to wrap up, or it's time for you to wrap up, they'll give you a light. And a lot of times it's worked out like, oh, when do you want your light when you're performing? Oh, give me when I have 2 minutes left, whatever. But an open mic, at this one, I guess they had an established light thing, which people who had been regularly going knew. I got a light, just kept going. And then eventually they like played music. And I was like, oh, I guess I've gone to. Like, I literally went so long they played me off. But it was an amazing set. And I was just doing like jokes about all that stuff, like being, you know, drunk and slutty. And it's like a whole bunch of my friends came out. They were so excited. Which, if I could give any advice, do not invite people to your first show. It worked out for me, but like, boy. And I was just doing a whole like chunk of jokes about how I had a thing for Indian guys, because I had a thing for Indian guys. And I didn't know this, but that open mic was a showcase for this thing called Florida's Funniest Comic.
Okay. And
so I got automatically, from that open mic, I got automatically moved to the semifinals of this competition.
That's crazy.
Which is insane. And there was every other comedian that was probably like, I'm going and going to try to get in these finals. And I was meeting all these comedians, and they're like, oh my God, nice to meet you. Who are you? You're so funny. And the owner of the club, not the owner, the manager, came up to me and he's like, hey, that's really funny. I want to put you in this thing, or you're going to be in the finals, but you need to be cleaner. And I didn't understand what clean meant for comedy clubs. So I wrote a whole different set. Like, I could have just taken out a bunch of the fucks and been fine. But, because I was saying fuck like every other...
Right, and if you're, I mean, I feel like you and I are both pretty conscious of, like, older people and, like, what clean means and, like, when not to cuss around kids and stuff. Which a lot of people aren't. And so if somebody, I would have thought the same thing. If
I tried to go,
clean,
like, G-rated
I'd
Disney.
be like, oh, I can't talk about sex ever.
Yeah. So I wrote a whole new set, which I was like, I don't think that's as funny as the other set, but there's some jokes. It's interesting. I also had a thing with a musical cue in the set, which I will never do again, because the DJ fucked it up. And so I was just up there like, all right, well, I bombed my second set. I had an amazing first set. Absolutely ate shit on my second set. But I still was like chasing a dragon. The thing is that I did it as a like, well, I'll try this, and then I'll figure out how to do other things from there.
Right.
But it's so corny, but the moment I got my first like big laugh on my first set, it was like something like clicked in my head, and I was like, this is what I'm supposed to do. Like, I was like, oh, this is my thing.
Right.
Like, and a lot of people go, I mean, chasing a dream is crazy. But a lot of people go like, wow, really, you know, bold move following your dream, which 100% is true. And it has not been easy, and it's an uphill climb. But I was never, I don't know, it made sense for me. I was like, oh, this will work out. Right. From the beginning. I was like, I don't know how, I don't know, like, at what capacity, but I was like, this is a thing I am good at.
Right.
Because that's the thing about following your dreams, too, is a lot of people a lot of people suck at their dreams.
I mean, a lot of people's...
It's like a lot of people's dream is to be in the NBA, and it's just not going to happen.
A lot of people's dreams is not taking in themselves into consideration. It's like them seeing something and like projecting
a version of themselves.
Yeah.
Inserting themselves. It's like, okay, well, is that a skill set you have?
Right. And
And obviously things can be developed.
Things can be developed, and I think also so much of your dreams, it depends on, like, with the NBA example, it's like, yeah, that has so much to do, like, there's so many factors that play into that, versus I think about, like, something, and, like, even with acting, like, having friends, I was just talking to a good friend of mine about this the other day, where she's had, like, a really successful modeling career, and I was kind of like, I don't really understand how, like, where the disconnect is between acting and modeling, right? Like, how do you, because in my mind, it was, like, a clear, easy transition, and she was just saying it's, like, truly who you know, and because she's...
Oh, yeah. Well, it's also, like, I mean, I'm not shitting on models, but it's, like, just because you're good at being in front of a camera still doesn't mean you'll be a good actress. But so much of acting is, like, a lot of my friends who are getting success, it's like, yes, there are people coming up, like, grassroots from comedy, and they're being discovered 100%, which is amazing. But so many of my friends who have gotten bigger opportunities in acting, it's like, yeah, they went to a school with like NYU has a whole, like, their Tisch arts program. It's, like, so tied into television that people are like, oh, you went to NYU, I'm going to hire this person from NYU. I have friends on shows because their friend from NYU got a show. And it's, like, it happens a lot with comedy writers. A lot of comedy writers come out of Harvard, and it's like, oh, you were afforded the opportunity to go to a school that now put you in a network of people who are going to consider you first.
Totally. And
it happens with basketball and football, which I didn't realize, but there are, like, high schools that get scouted. And it's like, you can be amazing at football, but if you live in Anchorage, Alaska, like, no one's looking for you.
No one's paying attention.
It's like, you'll be lucky if you get...
Which maybe has been lessened by, like, the internet, you know? Like, being able to, like, put your reels and stuff like that on there. But I just think about, like, there are very specific areas where, like, you're really relying on somebody to vouch for you, and acting being one of them. You know, like, comedy, you can go to an open mic night and, like, prove yourself at different places.
It's like you're still, like, for higher level stuff, getting into clubs.
Right, exactly. You're still for those, but you can still get in the practice of doing it. Versus acting is like, yeah, I guess you could sit at home and practice.
Like monologues, but it's like, if you're not giving the opportunity to be in front of the right person.
Right, and for that person to go like, oh, yeah, I can see that, like, I caught you on a good day. Yeah. And, like, you're caffeinated enough, or you're chill enough, or you're not, like, nervous enough, or whatever.
That it works out, that it's a good job.
And I'm willing to also, like, because if you're... I just imagine if you're a casting director, right, and you're in casting, and you're going, hey, this person's good for this role, whatever, you're also putting yourself on the line.
Yeah, because if they suck, then whoever you're working with isn't going to want you to cast things again.
Right. And so I think that that's, like, a really interesting kind of space where so much of what you want does rely... Like, with sports, it's a totally different... I was going to say ball game. But
literally.
It's just different in a way. And with action sports, it's totally different. But it's different in a way because you're, like, genetics, injuries, like, all these other things. But
factors,
then factor into it. And then with acting, it's, like, it's that. And then with comedy, I feel like there's so many tiers of different things.
Well, yeah, and there is the, like, knowing people, or, like, getting discovered for your talent, or getting discovered because you... our talent, but also fit the specific thing they're looking for. You're the young whatever thing, and they're like, oh, you're funny enough, and we'll try to push you, because I do think sometimes the industry just jumps on someone and tries to shove them down people's throats, and it's like, yeah, they're okay, but, like, you're gonna blow them up more than they're ready for, and then I don't envy people who get, like,
scooped up.
Yeah, who get, like, blown up right away, because the fucking world is cruel, and now with the internet and people, it's so accessible for people to just shit on you.
And when you're that young...
and you don't get time to develop,
like, you're not ready to process that. Like, I think about my friends who saw success really early on in life, and, like, for some of them, when that's faded, I really sympathize with them. And I had this conversation with a friend of mine who was in, like, a pretty successful band in his early, like late teens and early 20s. And when that band, like, fell apart, I was like, dude,
they disbanded.
When they did.
We're just all over. Crushing it.
To have your only adult experience be being famous.
Yeah, and then you're like, where do I go from here?
What do I do, right? Like, I think about...
how do I be in the real world?
Yeah, and I thought about how great it was. There was that actor who, like, somebody was like, oh my god, I can't believe he's, like, bagging groceries. And he's like, hey, don't make fun of me for making, like, an honest living. Like, it's respectable. Like, what is wrong with that? And I think that... I mean, that takes a lot of maturity and space from people who think otherwise, and space from people. I mean, growing up here, there's so much, like, I didn't play music.
There's so much ego, too.
There's so much ego and judgment, and for years, I didn't tell people here that I was playing for music, and then for a while, I just didn't play music, because people would go like, oh, you're a drummer? Oh, and you're not in a band that's signed? What's the point?
It's
and
like,
I was
why?
like...
And you're like, I genuinely enjoy music.
Yeah, like, it took me years to go like, oh.
You can enjoy something and not make it your whole...
Or you can enjoy something and be pursuing it, and, like, it's okay to be in that place of pursuing it.
Yeah, and not, like, already a household name. Like, yeah, no, we're not all Def Leppard. That's a bad example. But, I mean, I love Def Leppard, but you're a drummer and isn't that the one with one arm? It doesn't matter.
So from there, you did those showcases, and then I know that for a while you had, like, a job that you were, you had, like, a normal job.
I, like, saved up, and I basically just, like, moved to LA and was like, I'm gonna make it.
Right.
Yeah, so for 2.5 years, I had a full-time job out here, day job, so I had to be there at 7 a.m. I'd go to work till 3:30. I would leave, go to open mics immediately. And, like, I'd do, like, 3 or 4 open mics a night, and then I'd hang out at the Comedy Store afterwards.
3 or 4 open mics a night?
Yeah, I'd, like, hustle all over town.
That's insane.
Yeah. And I would do it every night. Like, well, when people are like, how many times are you getting up? And that's the thing about comedy is that, like, yes, there are knowing people. There's ways to, like, get in. You get a leg up. You get noticed for something specific. But also, what I like about comedy is that, at least in my experience, if you are, decently talented and you work hard, as much as it would be nice for someone to just flop out and be like, hey, we want to put you on every television show ever and give you a bunch of money. That's great. But, like, I have proved to myself, and then I didn't really think about it till when I got past at the store. Another comedian pointed it out to me. He actually sent me, like, a very nice email. But that, like, you can work hard and make it. Like, if you, it's a thing where, like, I don't know, I get that in probably a lot of industries, it's hard to, like, or it's easy to get discouraged if things aren't immediately coming, like, from I'll just keep my head down and I'll work hard. But that's what I've always done, and it's working out for me. Like, I'm still growing. Everything's still getting bigger. I'm definitely not, huge in comedy, but I'm making my money from it. And I'm like, oh, I did all that from just working hard, which is interesting, too, when sometimes comedians who have been doing it as long as me or, like, a little bit newer. So comedians sometimes will just want to, like, quote, pick my brain. Mm-hmm. And I think that they think I'm going to give them some sort of magic pill answer, like Jack and the Beanstalk. And I'm like, no, I'm a workaholic. I work my ass off. Like, yeah. I have everything because I've worked hard, not, and
like, as your friend, I'm fully aware that you're also, like, you, like, keep a low overhead, like, you're money conscious, like,
yes, it's like, yeah, I'm full, like, when I go, like, yeah, I make all my money doing stand-up, it's like, yeah, I also don't live in a $2,000 a month apartment,
right?
It's like, I keep a low overhead because I would rather, it's like, yeah, eventually, do I want maybe a bigger, nicer place? Yeah, probably someday. But I'm like, I would rather have a low overhead and be able to dedicate all my time to stand up. Because if my bills were a little bit higher, I probably would still have a day job. Like, right. I'm not kidding myself. Yeah. Or I would have to just hustle way harder. And then because of the day job, I wouldn't have the time to do it.
You'd have to stop drinking coffee.
Yeah. I mean, what a nightmare. But I make enough money and I keep everything, all my costs low enough that I can dedicate all my time to working on the thing I love, which is comedy.
So, how do you decide when something is, like, ready for... Do you test things out on smaller audiences before you do bigger audiences? Like, do you just mix new material into, like, a older set that is going to kill it, and then, like, bring up something new?
Yeah, I do that a lot. The Comedy Store, I'm very lucky to have that because the late night sets, it just feels so loose that it's sort of anything goes. So... much like open mics where it's like, yeah, at an open mic, you can just throw shit at the wall and see what works. But sometimes it's easy to, like, when I would do 3 and 4 open mics a night, it's easy to get in your head about the fact that you're seeing the same comedians. And it's like, at the end of the day, like, they're all doing the same thing. Mm-hmm. They're all working on their stuff. You can't worry about what, I'm like, oh, these comedians are going to be like, she's just doing the same bit she's been doing, but there's a small tweak. Right. You're just trying a different punchline or a different something, but you get like, oh, are they going to be like, oh, she's just doing the same. It's easy to, like, criticize yourself and worry about what other people are thinking, but you just kind of gotta... Someone once said to me, it was in reference to, like, career successes, but, like, this phrase, eyes on your own paper, which has been immensely helpful. It's like, don't worry about what everyone else is doing.
Or thinking.
Yeah. Like, just do your work. Yeah. You know that you're working on something. You don't have to be like, I'm not going to an open mic to work out a worked out set unless, like, maybe it's for a specific showcase and I just want to, like, repeat it over and over so I don't fuck it up if it's something have tweaked and I'm unfamiliar with the flow or whatever, but... Yeah, for new stuff, a lot of times, especially if you're doing something dark or like more personal, it can be kind of like, oh, if this doesn't go well, it's gonna fucking hurt. So I don't think this is unique to me. A lot of comedians will do this. I mean, sometimes I just go balls to the wall and go out and I'm like, I'm just gonna fucking try it and see what happens if I feel super confident about it. But most of the time, it's like I'll do something that I know works, quick joke or whatever, to get people on board with who I am.
Right.
And then you squeeze it in the middle, and that way, if it goes well, you're like, great, I can develop it, I can keep working, you can keep working out whatever you're trying to work on it. But if they're just not into it, you can pull back and go, let me go into something that works, or you can just fucking lean in and be like, well, I'm going to keep talking about all these things I want to get through and see if any of them stick.
Yeah.
If any of these punchlines or tags resonate with you. I don't know.
And then how do you get paid? Like, how do you know how much you're getting paid? How do you figure that out? Like,
at the beginning and the beginning, you don't. Like, if you're like, I'm going to be in comedy and you think you're going to like, I'm going to get into it for the money, just don't. You're not going to make money at all. Probably the first few years. But it varies from situation to situation. Some, like, clubs, if you're doing showcase spots, have flat fees for, like, every comedian makes this amount. Some, like... This is in LA for like showcase style clubs. Like the Comedy Store, if you're doing a set in the original room, it's a flat fee. No matter who you are, no matter how famous you are, you get the same amount.
Really?
Yes. And that is $20 in the original room, which I could go on about how the fact that's like they're sold out every night. It used to be 15 and now they're like, well, we're giving you 20. And it's like, well, come the fuck on. But in the main room, they split the door with the lineup. So it's like everyone gets a percentage. So you're making like a minimum a couple $100 depending on. And since they usually sell out, it's interesting because they're not selling out because I'm on the lineup. You know what I mean? I know that. I'm not delusional. But if I'm on the end of a lineup with Joe Rogan and it sells out, because people came to see Joe Rogan, I am now making $400 for a 15-minute set.
Right. Which I want to like stop right there a little bit because I imagine that there's some people doing the math and going like, oh my God, that's so much money for 15 minutes of your time. At the same time, like the hours of time and like years of time of your life that it's taken to like hone that 15-minute set.
Yes. And to just get that opportunity to like, you don't just get to go, I would like to do 15 minutes and like, sure, we'll get up there and we'll give anybody this amount of money.
Right.
And don't get me wrong, especially for a club showcase set, that is a great amount of money for 15 minutes.
Right.
Relative to other clubs where you do the same amount, et cetera, et cetera. Like that's...
And that could honestly, I mean, that could, if you think about it, it is reasonable that sometimes that is like, you might have 2 of those or 1 of those a week, and maybe you only made $400 that week.
That week, exactly. So it's very fluctuating.
Right.
And then, and it's like the years that go into even being afforded that opportunity. Like, it took me 6 years to get past to the Comedy Store, and that's a very small amount. Like, it's harder now than ever to get past to the Comedy Store.
What does that mean?
Well, about 3 or 4 years ago, they switched talent coordinators. The original one got fired. And he liked me, but he had this vibe of very much like, who's funny, but like, who's cool. He cared who was hanging out. He wanted more than just like whether or not you were funny and capable. He's like, what do the other paid regulars think of you? And the club honestly was failing. It's like he's putting up all these like young people. It's like he was trying to cast a cool movie in his mind. And don't get me wrong, like a lot of those comedians are my friends. They're funny, but it's like no one gives a fuck about this person they've never heard of. They're not coming out for like this young name on a marquee. They like, I don't know who the fuck that is. So when they switched, a lot more, because there were a lot of comedians that just didn't like that guy. They didn't work with him because he was very weird and had his own quote methods. But when Adam took over, he had been a general manager and then they moved him to talent coordinator. And he was already a fan of my stuff because I was doing development spots at the Comedy Store, which is where they put like quote, it's called development, but they put unpaid comics up on like other shows in the belly room and stuff. It's just a place to work out, whatever. And you're kind of in the system to theoretically eventually showcase to become a paid regular. But he was already a fan of mine. He'd seen me go up, and there was just like this small group of people who he was already a fan of that weren't, like didn't have a big like TV show, huge credit.
Right.
That like sort of were still on his mind. So Adam, in my opinion, I've never asked him this directly. It's the vibe I get just based on the whole vibe there. I love him, and I think he has great taste. I think the lineups he's made have greatly impacted the store. It's like sold out almost every night. I mean,
that's awesome.
Joe Rogan didn't come back until Adam was in charge, and like there's so many comedians that have come back, and it's just great. It's like a cool place. And he, there were a couple people who were in the development system who were paid regulars that he straight up was like, yeah, I'm probably not going to give you that many spots because you're not my taste, which is a thing you have to realize with comedy club bookers, which it's helped me grow as a person to go like, oh, if this club doesn't want to book me, I don't need to beat myself up or try to be like, well, how can I make myself book up like presentable to them? Because I did that for the first few years, and I think a lot of comedians do this, that you get in your head about like, well, what does quote the industry want, and then instead of doing your comedy you're like trying to become this thing that you think they want, and that's not good for anybody.
No, in any field of creative endeavors. Period.
But as far as I can tell, like, Adam's very friendly, he's very fun. In terms of people getting passed to be a paid regular, he does not give a fuck if you're hanging out. He's like, are you funny?
Which is awesome.
Which is great.
Because the whole hanging out thing, I've seen it in music and across just different kind of like areas of like things that are cool in LA, where it's like, well, I can't believe you came and then didn't stay for whatever. How rude. And it's like, my time is my time.
It's like, my time is valuable. I'm going to work on my stuff.
And like, obviously I want to support other people. That's not the issue. The issue is that like, maybe
I can't spend all night. Yeah. It's like, I can't sacrifice my health because you want me to see your 15 minutes. Or whatever. And it's like, I really love that because...
Eyes on your own paper.
Yes. Well, and it's like, so many people, I think, are worried about... And maybe it's because I live in this LA vacuum, but it seems like people want to book people or are concerned about things that have nothing to do with whether they're funny. It's like, are you PC enough for this? Which is like, there's a whole place for that. And it's like, and you know, like, diversity among lineups is so important, but when someone's booking their lineup by going like, I don't think you're being a better person by going, make sure we have this many black people and this many women, and it's like, yeah, okay, well, if you know that many comedians, you're organically trying to have a diverse lineup in terms of types of material, life experiences, viewpoints. I would assume that would happen more organically. It's like you have to compensate for it a little and make sure you're like taking a look at these lineups. And Luisa Diaz, who's a producer in New York, did a whole thread about it on Twitter. Like, she kept tabs of her lineups, and she's like, here's where I could have been better, and here's where like I wish these numbers would have been higher. But like, there's a difference between organically making sure you have a diverse lineup and just
checking a box.
Booking women for the sake of booking women. Go fuck yourself. And the amount of women I've seen on Twitter, and I've left multiple Facebook groups of all women, as soon as people go, because like, also maybe I just have some sort of territorial like place in my heart for the Comedy Store, but like it's been so good to me. At no point have I been made to feel, and my experience is not everyone's, and I get that like comedy's a creepy place and there are degenerates, and it's like, yeah, okay, I can believe that you've been sexually harassed or whatever, and like that's fucking terrible and it shouldn't happen. But like when women go, oh, the Comedy Store hates women, it's like the Comedy Store loves women. Adam gives me so many spots that like, in terms of credits, like if you want to like break down like what I've done on television, like he could give those spots to way more people that are gonna draw bigger. But the whole point of what I was saying is that like, in terms of like the hanging out thing, he doesn't give a shit if you hang out. You have to be funny, but it's also like, he has to see you, he has to know who you are. Like when women who are not huge in comedy complain about, oh, the Comedy Store won't book me. Yeah, or like, oh, I see that you haven't booked women. I've seen people reply to, I retweeted something once, and it was like me on a lineup, and a girl who I think is very funny on Twitter. I think she's a comedian. I'm not saying this dismissively. I've never seen her on a lineup. I don't know what her performances are like. Great writer. I love her tweets. She responded, and I didn't even say anything because I just was like, I don't have the energy to go down this rabbit hole. But she's like, oh, it's nice to see them finally booking women. And it's like, you don't get to complain about there not being women at a club that you as a woman have not gone to.
Yeah.
Like, no one is, like, people want women. They're not leaving a sold-out comedy club to come find you.
And if you're, I mean, I think this also comes back to what we were talking earlier about, where we're like, wow, if dialysis is such an issue, why aren't they, like, you know, working to get nutrition and stuff with diabetes earlier on? And, like, yeah, maybe the issue, like, sure, maybe you feel like there's not enough women at the Comedy Store, and then perhaps let's focus on the issue of like why women aren't feeling comfortable staying in comedy. And like why, like let's make like these smaller clubs more comfortable for women and more approachable, and let women know that they're invited, because there are places that I've been that it's all male, but I feel super welcome.
Yeah.
And I've never felt uncomfortable at all. Like yesterday actually I went to this thing I'm gonna rudely pull up my phone to get the name of the store, because my friend took me to this event at a shop called Rothstein. I think is how it's pronounced. I think it's called Rothstein. At any rate, like, it's like this Taste of Beats thing, and it's these producers, and it was great, and I really loved it. And I looked around, because I've gone to a lot of things like that before, especially in the hip-hop world, and sometimes it's been like a little bit stern, where I'm like, oh, I feel like I'm not allowed to smile or laugh ever, because everyone here is super serious. Like, like we're both big Immortal Technique fans, and like when I've been to like that vibe of like
everyone's
events,
so intense.
Everybody's so intense, and I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I know. I'm like the only one wearing colorful outfits, and I'm like, hey, everybody.
But I was there, and it was like such a lovely vibe, and it took me a second to be like, oh, this is the first one I've been to where there's also women in attendance, and this is lovely. And like a few girls, they had like a showcase section where it was like open mic for, you know, like if you want to like freestyle or whatever.
Oh, that's
and
cool.
A few girls went on, and it was so awesome to be in an environment where like everybody, actually, in fact, all the girls that were on killed it. There were like a few guys that like weren't that good.
Yes.
But still, everybody who was running the show, even if somebody wasn't good, was like, hey, let's give them a hand, and like supported the fact that they went on there, and like let's make that across comedy, music, whatever, in those early stages more comfortable for women,
so that they feel comfortable going out. They feel.
Yes.
I agree with that 100%, 1,000%. And I've even told women who have voiced it to me personally, oh, I just don't feel comfortable there, because I will say, I get that Comedy Store can have like a cliquey vibe, and because of the, what is the word I'm looking for? The ratio of men to women, I could get how you could go, oh, it's because I'm a woman I feel this way. And I'm like, no, I think it's just a very like, fratty is a shitty word to be like, it's not women, and then you go, it's fratty, but like,
but it is.
It's a club.
Yeah.
But like, and comedy is quote a boys' club, and that is not untrue. But I don't think if you really were to examine what's going on, the exclusionary feeling is because you're a girl. It's like it's like you just don't
here
know specifically. Here. It's just like it's this like family bond, and once they know you, they're not like, oh, a woman.
Right.
They're just, in my opinion, happen to be more men now than women.
Totally. And granted, there are places like that where it is like that, where you are treated specifically a certain way because you're a woman, and it's like but are you? Can you?
Of course, and I don't think people are doing that with comedy anymore. But I do also get that like,
maybe
there's other reasons, and it's not, that's my experience, and I can't voice for everyone. And it's like, and if you feel like uncomfortable and you feel like it's because you're a woman, then that fucking sucks, and that shouldn't happen. And I've told multiple women that I know, or like when it's come up in conversation, female comics, I'm like, if you ever want to come, if you see I'm on a lineup, come, hang out, I'll show you around, I'll introduce you to people. Like, it's not bad. It's intimidating.
Right.
But like, I don't want you not going there because you feel uncomfortable, because you feel unsafe.
Or just out of place. Even.
Yeah,
like,
and then
it's not a safety thing, because there are times where it's like, oh, I'm not worried about my safety, period. Like, I'm not.
Yeah.
But I just feel a different way about it. Like,
it's just uncomfortable.
And sometimes I realize it's just in my head. Like, there's...
Well, it is. It's like social anxiety. I mean, it's the same to me as going to a party where you know one person and then that person wanders off. You're like, I'm alone. It's not like, I'm not having fun at this party because I'm a woman. It's like, no. It's just uncomfortable. And yeah, as a woman, we have to constantly feel unsafe, which is shitty. But I'm like, in the defense of comedy clubs, you're going to feel unsafe at a Walmart. Like, what do you... Like, that's sort of on society. That's a whole thing we need to work on as a whole.
Have you been to a mechanic?
Right? And you're just like, I don't know, take my money.
Yeah, definitely. So then, I'm trying to think, like, what other things that I've thought are really fascinating, because obviously, like, watching you develop material...
I've derailed so much.
No, you haven't. No, it's good. I think it's, like, all really important things to talk about. And then maybe let's jump into the Fringe.
Okay.
And your preparation for that, because I think anyone who is considering that or is hearing of it, like, as a performer, that, you know, especially since it was your first one, I feel like it's still fresh in your mind.
Yes.
Can you explain, because I have done such a terrible job of explaining what the Fringe is, because I didn't actually look it up before committing to go with you.
I mean, it's a whole thing.
Right, and I was like, oh, that sounds great, sure, I'll go, I would love to help, however, and then I can't remember. I think I said something to somebody and they were like, that's a really big deal. And I was like...
I knew it was a big deal, but...
Yeah.
This is more a reflection of my self-worth, and this is a huge thing I have to work on, is accepting and, like, being confident with where I am, with my abilities, because I still am shocked. And it happens fairly frequently with shows now, that at least a few people are there to see me. They're like, I listened to your podcast, I heard you on this podcast, I know you from such and such, just little things, or they follow me on Instagram, or they're a fan of so-and-so, and they saw them talk about me. I am still shocked that anyone comes for me, like, specifically. Like, I can't wrap my head around the fact that, like, it's 100% a self-worth thing. So I dismissively said to someone who was, like, a theater actress, I was like, yeah, I got in the Fringe, but I feel like, doesn't everybody get in the Fringe? And she's like, no, I wanted to go to the Fringe for years.
Oh, God.
I've never gotten in. And I was like, oh. Okay. Like, I was like, oh, I'm an asshole, because I wasn't trying to be dismissive. It was 100% self-worth that I'm like, if they've accepted me,
they would take any old
They would
person.
take anybody, and it's like, no,
And there's also, like, hundreds of people on it. So
yeah.
I could see why you'd feel that way, because if you've never been if it was never something that you were super into, and you're unfamiliar with it, you're like, oh, this many people made it, surely they cast a wide net.
Yeah, well, it's even like, I'm part of a lot of things that are objectively exclusionary and picky, like the Comedy Store itself, or I've been invited to comedy festivals where it's like, it's a very small group of people they've selected, and I still go like, I don't know, maybe I'm here on a fluke. And it's like, no, you are capable at the thing you do. You're good, accept that. But the Fringe, Edinburgh, is like a month long. First of all, there's Fringe festivals all over the world. Some of them just last a weekend.
Oh, I didn't know. So I knew about the one in Adelaide. But
Yeah,
I did
Adelaide.
not know that there were ones all around the world.
Yeah, there's a pretty big one. There's none, I think, in the States that are known hugely. Orlando does a pretty big one. And there's little pop-up ones, like New York has a Fringe. It's like a weekend long.
But the goal of it, can you explain, like, kind of what the theme, like, goal, theme,
I mean,
kind of concept
it depends. Is? I guess goals are individual based on the performer, but it's like...
of the festival.
Yeah, okay. Well...
because I feel like it's inherent in the name by saying that, like, it's stuff on the
Fringe. It's, like, on the Fringe. So it's things that aren't necessarily mainstream. And I think a lot of Fringe festivals were started out of, like, we want an avenue to put these things that maybe aren't... I think it's great for people who, going back to, like, the branding and being able to make yourself one-dimensional, being like, I'm this and that, I think is great for mainstream consumption, for just dumb network executives that are like, well, if I can't put it in a box, how can I sell it to this production company? And the Fringe is great for things that are on the Fringe. Well, to me, it's just like, oh, it's more complicated than being able to be like, I'm this one-dimensional thing. I'm easily palatable. It's things that are maybe a little bit out there or a little darker, or they have a more specific audience, and it's not this easily, digestible necessarily type of theater. So it's like, where can we have a place for a lot of that type of art to go, for people who are looking for that kind of art to come see it. And so a Fringe festival is a way of going like, hey, here's a bunch of that stuff, and it's all over the place, and it's like a bunch of weird stuff, a little something for everybody.
You don't have to like lurk LA Weekly.
Yeah, you don't have to like find these hidden basement.
Yeah.
It's like taking things that I think are inherently considered maybe underground.
Yeah.
And bringing them to a mainstream location. It's like, here you can see all the things that like otherwise would be this obscure, only like certain people know about it. And it's
like basically everyone who's in the production and their friends would know about it. Or like if they have a succinct, like very specific niche, like maybe blogs talk about it. Yeah. So then for yours...
It's this way of going like, this is a thing that has an audience, but the audience doesn't know how to find it. Let's give a place where the audience can find it.
Yeah. Which it's awesome. Like I think it's a really great kind of like mission and goal. And then for yours in particular, so you... always do stand-up, and then you specifically pitched or applied with like this immersive theater
well, because I'd heard for a few years people talk about the Fringe. I heard Ari talk about like doing his hour at the Fringe, and a lot of stand-ups do it, and like comedy hours there seem to all sort of have this like arc and a message a little bit, but I also think it's a great place to work out. If you're just working at a stand-up hour, you get like 28 days of like repetitive doing your set over and over, so you can make all the tweaks you want, and hopefully by the end, if you're going to film it for something, you're not sick of it. But like, from the minute I heard about it, I was like, oh, I want to do that eventually, and I want to do something different. I want to, like, that is the place to get creative, to get a little weird.
And challenge yourself.
Yeah, and it's like, yeah, I love doing stand-up. I want to do stand-up all over the world, and I've been lucky enough to get to do it in a lot of places, but I'm like, if I have the opportunity to go somewhere where something different would be embraced, because sometimes you have these weird creative ideas and it's almost like, would anyone care about this?
Right, and where do I put it?
And where do I put, because it's like, I can't do what I did for the Fringe. Like, if people came to see my stand-up, which there were a few people who came because they know my stand-up or they saw me do a small stand-up set, who were like, whoa.
Yeah.
And a lot of them ended up, like, giving positive feedback and enjoying it, but they're like, that is not what I expected.
Right.
So I'm like, where can I put something?
Should have read the flyer.
Yeah. I'm like, I tried to be very clear. So it's an opportunity to, like, oh, I want to do something different creatively. I want to sort of flex this muscle in a way that isn't, I mean, it's, I don't want to say it's like a safe space for weird stuff, but it is a little bit safer than, it's still so scary and very vulnerable because, like, the show I did was about a personal experience and I got pretty deep with personal things, but it's sort of this, like, okay, if I can get the festival, if I pitch this idea and they're on board, then it's kind of like this green light to go, yeah, we think that this is something that Fringe goers would find interesting. So then you go, okay, because I think because of my own self-worth issues, I need a lot of, hey, that's not as crazy as you think it is.
Right.
Which I wish I didn't, and I hope within the next few years, my own, like, work on myself and just enough putting out content and having it be well received will just reinforce that, and I'll be able to just know myself. It's fine. There's an audience for it. But I have moments of, do I seem crazy to the entire planet?
Right.
And I have this, like, deep-seated fear of being perceived as, like, just a totally off-hinge, like, crazy person that nobody relates to. But then the more you do things, the more you put stuff out there. A lot of times the way it's received, you go, oh, other people are having these thoughts.
Yeah.
I am not alone in this. And it's cathartic for you as the artist, but also, like, it's great to hear that someone's like, I have those thoughts all the time, and it was cool to see someone verbalize them out loud because I thought I was crazy.
Right.
Which happened a lot with, especially women who came to my show would be like, those are things I think of, and, like, I always thought that I was the only person having these, like, breakdowns about, like, even, like, a meditation in general, because my show happened to be about meditation. People, like, beating themselves up over, like, fuck, I'm not meditating.
Right.
And it's like, oh, no, we're all doing that? Oh, wow, what a perspective. God, I've gone all over the place.
No, you didn't. So
it's just sort of this opportunity to take a different creative project, and mine was specifically a one-woman show about a specific experience I had. I went on a 10-day silent meditation, and I went because I was, like, trying to make myself better. I didn't go, like, I'm going to see what this is like and write a show about it, you know? I would never do that.
Except for on Sundays when you decide to live your life like a normal person.
Yes, when I'm like, aha, life experience Sunday. I'll brunch? Is that what it's called? I'll have a mimosa. And they're like, what? You're a robot. I was, like, literally spiraling out of my mind. I went through a breakup, which breakups are hard in general, but it just triggered all these other things from my past. And, like, it was just sort of this tiny straw that broke the camel's back, and I was going crazy. And I did a 10-day silent meditation, and then, like, part of the way through, I was like, because I had been like, I want to do something creative for Fringe. I don't want to force it. I don't want to go if I don't have an idea. And I was like, this is a thing, because it's just this whole emotional roller coaster of, you're trapped with your thoughts for 10 days. You're not talking to anyone.
It must be really gnarly, like, forced reflection.
Oh, yeah, because it's...
And, like, just marinating and everything.
Yeah, which as a stand-up, you kind of... I don't want to say, like, all stand-ups do this. I tend to do that anyway, which is where a lot of my more personal material comes from. Because theoretically, if I think about what I've done on a daily basis, I wake up and I work and I don't stop working until I pass out. But when I look at the output of work, based on the amount of time I'm, quote, working, I'm like, what the fuck am I doing all day? But it does end up being a lot of, like, self-reflection, and I'm just thinking about my life, which, fortunately, I beat myself up over because I'm like, I could be more productive, but realistically, it's like, that actually is helping my work.
Yeah.
Because that feeds into my material. But, I mean, working on yourself and doing deep self-reflection, I get in the long run how it's helpful, and it is definitely helping me grow as a person. I also, especially after an intense experience like that, I get why people would be like, yeah, no, I'm just not going to take the time to work on myself. Because that's horrifying.
Yeah.
Because having to, like, it's easy to go, like, oh, I'm broken because of this and that, and, like, look at your trauma. And, you know, it's great to realize, like, oh, because this happened, I'm this way. But that much time alone with yourself, you also have to, like, you break down, like, egoistically and go, like, oh, here's where, like, I'm not a great person. And it's, like, because it's so much easier to see. That's the reason they say, like, people are mirrors of you, and you can, like, they're like, oh, a lot of times the things you hate in people are actually things you hate in yourself, and you go, no, that person's just really fucking annoying, which sometimes is true, don't get me wrong. You're like, I would never do that. But, like, that much time alone and examining, like, how did this relationship fail? What went wrong here? Or, like, having to accept it, like, there's nothing you could have done and it doesn't have anything to do with you. But, like, having moments of going, like, yeah, I leaned on that person too much, or, like, here's where I've joked about it. I've made tweets from because I made a Twitter account for the show specifically, and I had a tweet that's like, financially I'm low maintenance, emotionally I'm a terrorist. Right. And it's like, I don't go like, I'm going to manipulate and, like, just burden this person with my sadness, but, like, boy, do I sometimes. And it's like, oh, yeah, I don't know. It's, trauma comes up. I'm telling you, like, it's, until you go through it, you go, like, until you've experienced, like, a surfacing memory you've suppressed, that seems, like, so far-fetched.
Yeah.
But to have, like, a trauma come up that you have forgotten and it's deep in you and you're like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Like, there's literally moments where you're, like, trying to meditate and then, like, you get lost in this fucking mental wormhole of some part of your childhood, and all of a sudden you're remembering a thing and you're like, oh, no wonder I'm fucked up. That you're like, right. Yeah, no, like, people tried to kill me. That's crazy. Or whatever, you know? Yeah. And it's like, holy shit, that's been buried. And then also still trying to, like, be in stillness, because the whole course I did was, no, I'm just going on about the meditation, but it was about learning to have things come up without reacting to them. And so then playing that out, or, like, pitching that as a show and going, here's an idea for a show, and then having the festival go, like, yes, we're accepting you, we want you to do that, and then going, that's not, like, I don't actually have, like, the show written about it.
And that is something I wanted to talk about, because I think there's, when you're applying for that kind of thing, you obviously, like, I would feel like I had to have it done already.
And there are different levels to it. Yeah, a lot of people are pitching finished shows that they've done somewhere else, or that they've already worked out, and they're like, I'm ready to present this thing. And I don't think I'm the only person who's done it this way. Right. Especially given the, like, manic tendencies of many artistic types. But I was like, this is a show. And they're like, yes, we accept it. And I was like, well, it's not like a show I've written. So then I was like, it was interesting for me because I wanted to do the festival as a creative endeavor from the first time I heard about it. But I have a very hard time finishing things. I'm a starter.
Same.
The amount of half-written scripts I have, the fucking, like, we should do this, we should do that, let's start a podcast, let's start a sketch group. And then I just abandon it. And there's no time to go into the issues that I realized that stems from, in addition to just being ADHD, but I'm like, I have a fear of rejection. I have, like, a deep fear of failure. It's like,
same.
If I half-ass something and you don't like it, I half-assed it. But if I put my whole heart into something and then
it doesn't work
you hate it, it's like, you hate me, who I am.
Why do you think that I haven't fully ever done anything for that exact reason. And it's become more and more evident to me over the years, and it's
painful, but then it's also still, like, realizing that is a step, but it's not enough to make you like, now I'll just do it. But this was like, I have a deadline.
Yeah.
I've committed to this. And they're like, yes, here's when you need this by, here's when you need that by. And I was like, okay, I'm going to commit to finishing this project, which was very personal. And I was like, it was the first time I was like...
And was such a departure from all of the work that you normally do, like, because you had to shoot a bunch of stuff. Because, so, in her show... there, like, she's physically there and there's a few props, but there's a whole video being projected
constantly
on the wall throughout the entire thing of, like, video content that's, like, both shot, edited, there's some illustration stuff, there's, like, a bunch of different elements to it, all kind of breaking down, and, like, characters where she plays, like, her mom and different people.
And it's, like, just things going on in my brain, and it's, like, versions of these characters that are, like, sort of, were supposed to be, like, the voices in my head that you hear that are... And, your, like, negative thoughts, or, like, totally, where they come from.
And memory portrayals and stuff like that. And so to go from stand-up, where it's you writing something, working it out on your own.
Where I have almost a decade of experience at this point. And it's like, I am confident in my abilities to, like, I am a capable stand-up comedian. I am aware of that. I know enough about myself now to know that, like, I can do the job.
Right.
But this is, like, I've been in sketches. I like acting. I like silly shit like that. But, like, I have no experience professionally in filming, editing, like, and, like, it was all by the seat of my pants on a very tiny budget. And it was, like, the amount of favors I called in and, like...
And faith that you had to have in people for those favors.
Which is also a huge departure from... I mean, part of the reason I do stand-up, which is a thing I realized about myself, is that, like, yes, for me to keep working, somebody has to book me. You know, it's like, I can do so much about, like, the bar, the club, the theater I'm going to has to go, yes, we will allow you to do your show.
Right.
But it's relatively, like, I'm relying on myself. Having someone to answer to gives me such anxiety that I'm like, oh... Yeah, part of this is that, like, all I have to do is answer to me, and I am not crippled by...
Yeah. By somebody else, like, not delivering what they said they would, or maybe they're waiting on you.
Yeah, it's like, I was like, oh, it made me realize how much I don't like to rely on people, and having to go... not even having to rely on people, the act of having to, like, it shouldn't be that hard, and I think for a lot of, like, well-adjusted people who grew up in a supporting household, it sounds so far-fetched, but, like, having to ask anyone for help. The things I
don't think it sounds far-fetched to women, because I think
all
of us are so used to...
Pull up your bootstraps. I'll do it myself.
And not just that, but all the strings attached when men are, like, willing to help us with stuff.
They're like, oh, do you think that by helping me, you think I'm gonna, you know...
Sleep with you,
you might get
you,
fucked.
Whatever. Like, there's so many things that I'm always like, no, I'll do it myself, because I'm like, I don't need to be beholden to you and your expectations, and for you to hold that above my head.
Yeah.
And even if you don't, I'll feel that way.
I mean, I have that for sure. I have, and it's, I think part of just 100% social conditioning. I think childhood experiences, trauma, or how I was raised, whatever.
And the fear of failure. Because when you incorporate other people into a project, then you're like, oh shit,
Relying
now I
on...
have to finish this.
Yeah, now that's the thing too, is that it's like, and the amount of times I wanted to quit, and I'm like, if I quit, these people are like, you just wasted my fucking time.
Right.
I helped you, whatever. That also helped drive me, but, like, when I tell you, like, the anxiety I have for asking for a little bit of help, it wasn't until 2 years ago I started even asking people for spots on shows. I would just get what came to me and say nothing, because I have friends who are close friends, they are commercially successful, they're on TV shows, and there are things that, like, I want to say, not even arguably, like, without a doubt, if I were to go, hey, will you, have this submission for whatever show you're on. I have multiple friends on TV shows, humble brag, whatever. But, like, especially, like, they're taking writers. Will you personally get this thing I've worked on to the right person so I have the best chances? Not even, and I would personally never ask, hey, can you...
No, yeah.
But, like,
certainly not.
It is not, they are close enough friends that were the shoe on the other foot. It would not be I would not think anything, I would not bat an eye if they were like, hey, can you just make sure that this gets seen by the... I'd be like, 100%, of course.
Yeah.
The amount of times I've had something written, something prepared, and been like, I should just ask this person, and I don't. I just, like, I'm just going to submit the normal way. I'm not going to... So it just probably goes into a pile. Yeah. They don't even know I'm submitting, because I'm like, I'll start to craft a text message, and I, like, shut down. And I'm like, I cannot ask for help. So
I get the same way.
Just having to go, I cannot do this alone. I need help. And the act of having to go, hey, will you help me with this idea? Because it's like, A, asking for help is hard. B, now I'm telling this person I'm asking people who obviously I respect their artistic opinion. I believe in their capabilities. And now I'm going, it's sort of going like, do you believe in me enough to help me? Because it's like, they don't want to waste their time. It's like, I don't really have a budget.
And you don't want to put anybody on the spot. Like, I never want to make anybody, and and asking those questions to me also, it's something where I never want to make anybody feel like they've been put in a corner or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, it's really, really hard. And what's crazy to me, and I find it so... It's also hard because I want to make sure that person knows that I'm not that person who's always asking for something. Because there's people who ask things of me that I'm like, I can't... Like, I'm shocked you had the guts to ask it. Like, I'm not upset at all.
Yeah, I'd be like, wow.
But there's been people that have been like, you know, especially because mostly everything that's like a favor... It's normally people are asking, like, me to give them a favor of something that's already a favor to me. So
Yeah.
it's like, oh, you're getting to go to this or whatever. Can you get a +1? And I'm like, I would never ask somebody that.
Yeah.
Like, and it's, you know, maybe it's just their, like, lack of familiarity with, like, the entertainment world.
Yeah,
like,
or they just, like,
whatever.
so flippantly, like, don't understand.
Or they just don't care, and they're like, hey, I ask, and sometimes it say, like, you don't.
Or they just have the, like, you know, all they can say is no. Wayne Gretzky, you'll miss 100%. It's like, and you know what? Sometimes like, oh, I can't believe they'd ask that. But then it's also like, good for you for having the part of me is like,
the balls to
I
just
wish I had
do
the balls
it.
to be like, hey, can I come?
Yeah, because I won't. Like, even, where was I? Oh, it was just with you. When I got here, and I was like, oh, you and your friend are getting food. Am I, like, invited to that, or do you just want to go with your friend? And you were like, yes,
of course you're invited.
Of course you can. I'm like, but I would just never want to impose. Like, what if it was like a catch-up, or what if it was like a friend that, like, you guys had to hash out work stuff, and then I don't want you to be like, oh, this girl's tagging along.
Don't say
That's nothing to do with
her.
comedy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
And it was like, there's so many. First of all, I didn't realize the, like, I didn't realize how big of a project it was until I was in the middle of it, and I was like, there were multiple times where I was like, I think I'm gonna kill myself. Like, I'm gonna just kill myself because I was so overwhelmed. Because you get emotionally overwhelmed, and, like, that's such a flippant thing to say, and I'm sure sorry if that's triggering to someone, but, like,
I get the same way where I'm like, oh, hopefully I just get in a car accident and can't go.
yeah, where it's like, yeah, no, the times I've been legitimately suicidal, by the way, and it's different for everyone, and, you know, get help, whatever, but I've never been suicidal in a state of, like, I'm so depressed, there's no reason for me to live, and obviously a lot of people get like that, and it's very unfortunate. My suicide, literally when I've been legitimately suicidal, or when I've been like, I kind of want to kill myself, it's like a anxiety. It's like a manic, it's not even that I don't want to live anymore, it's like I don't know how to shut these feelings off.
Right.
Which I will say that meditation has helped a lot with,
or
too.
to push through that wall of, like, whatever the anxiousness is, as I'm like, oh, I can't even fathom having this finished to a place that I would feel comfortable with the world seeing it, or I can't even imagine.
And I was down to the wire. Like, I was like, this isn't gonna, and it still wasn't. There was still stuff. You were helping me edit at the festival. We changed the sound. I mean, and even, like, it's also like there was so little budget, and it's like an emotionally exhausting project, which was very deeply about me. So even, like, halfway through, my friend who was, like, helping on all the editing and, like, directing of the film, he sort of, like, lost momentum because he's got his own, like, life. He's got his own depression to deal with, and then, like, I started pulling back even more, asking because I felt bad. I could, like, sense him being overwhelmed, and there were times where he, like, had to reassure me, and it was just like a clusterfuck of codependence.
Which, by the way, the show is called
Codependent Arising.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I was like, the fact that, I mean, Buddy Hutton, who he directed all the, like, I don't even say he directed all the film stuff, because some of it was, like, me in front of a camera alone when he was gone. But, like, he was, like, helped with the vision of that. He helped with the editing. The structure of it. Yeah, like literal exec producing. He, at the last minute, paid an editor. He's like, we just can't get it done by ourselves. And I'm obviously, like, reimbursing him from that. And, like, as part of his, like, whatever, you know, because it's like, I do have a budget, but it's very small, guys. I was like, the irony that I have leaned on you too much for a project called Codependent Arising. Like, there was at some point we were just both, I think it was when he came to Edinburgh, and, like, we just laughed about it, and he was like, he's also so meticulous with his editing and everything. And his filming, which is why I was like, I want you to help me. I would love for you to help me. I think I love the way his brain works. I think he's very creative. And then I think we had a conversation about how there was a lapse of, like, he didn't feel like he could give as much creative input. And I'm like, I wanted that. Right. Like, he took a step, he, like, purposely stepped back because he's like, it's your thing. And I wanted, you know, you to really, like, fully lean into trusting your ideas. And I'm like, I appreciate that. I wish you would have said that from the beginning, because I thought you just hated me halfway through the project. Oh. We had this whole thing, and he's like, why would I was like, I thought you were just abandoning me and giving up. And he's like, no, I just knew that. And he said he had, like, we're very close friends. He'd talked to his mom about how he's like, I don't know what to do. I want to do this. It's like, I want to step back. And they had this conversation about how, like, you know, that I would be, in the end, happier with the project if I was given the freedom.
If it felt like yours and ownership, and it didn't feel
but then he also had these, like, resentments of, you know, from the beginning I had all these ideas, and then he's like, and then I had to sort of cope with, oh, this isn't really my project. Right. Because at the beginning, he's like, it seemed like I was going to have more into it, and then it sort of slipped out of my hands, and it just made him realize a lot of stuff about, which I think he needed to realize. He's like, I want to be on the creative side of things. It sort of made him go, which he should be.
Which is, so, like, quick, I guess, like, note about Buddy is that's how Jessica and I know each other, is that Buddy and I grew up together because our parents dated, and then, like, him and his sisters and I have all stayed close, so I call them my brother and sisters because it's easier. It's much easier than going, like, oh, our parents dated.
Yeah.
And so we basically have always known each other. I guess I could just call them my, like, childhood friends, but whatever. Mm-hmm. Anyways, and he is really creative and funny, and I think, you know, in the same way that, like, in the same vein of, like, what we've been talking about, there's just for a lot of people, you know that you're funny and creative, and taking that leap and making yourself that vulnerable and putting it out there is terrifying.
Yeah, and then to go, like...
But that's a healthy thing for people to realize when they work on stuff. Like, that's what made me kind of pull away from working on projects with other people all the time, and I've honestly even been less social in the last, like, year.
Yeah.
Because I was like, wait, I'm putting all this energy into supporting other people and their endeavors because I believe in them, and, like, I believe in myself, and I don't put that level of work into that.
And I was, like, glad that he realized that. I was like, I want you to put some... And then, I mean, there was this whole... I go on and on about the lapse in communication where I was like, I wanted your creativity in it, even though it was my thing. And there definitely was. There's so many elements, and I could not have done it without him. Like, I spent multiple nights at an editing bay not understanding how to edit, and I was like, I'm gonna kill myself. And, like, towards the end, he's like, yeah, no, editing makes me literally want to kill myself. And I was like, had I known, I was like, you just, like, talk about, you know, like, you're an editor, and I just, for some reason, thought you were like, click, 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 and it's all fucking easy for you. No,
it's like a breakdown every time.
Yeah, and I'm like,
I can't handle it.
Had I known that, like, I was like, I'm so sorry. Like, I didn't know how this felt. And I feel like you know, but it was like, thank God it was, like, a close enough friend. But you're opening up and going, here's this, like, crazy project where, it's a fuck ton of work, which I didn't realize. And I think he had an
hour of video content.
Well, yeah, and he had a much better capacity for understanding how much it was going to be. Especially with how meticulous he is, because he, like, overdoes the shooting.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, I would have, which, thank God, because I would have flippantly been like, all right, we got it, next scene. And it's like, which I did, which you can see in a couple of the characters. I was like, yeah, good enough. But, yeah, I had no idea the scope of how big it was just work-wise because of the amount of video, but then also it's so vulnerable. Yeah. So it's like, it's easy to go like, wow, if everyone else thinks it's stupid, and they're going to be like, why am I working on this fucking dumb project?
And, you know, you, like a lot of people, and myself as well, have a thing where, like, we don't want to be seen as self-indulgent.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, like, I want to share this thing without being like, look at me and my experience. I'm like, I just only have my experience to draw from. Yeah. Where it's like, I don't want to be like, oh, I'm a artist riddled with sadness. But I'm like, well, I'm trying to give life to this experience I had.
Which is your life.
And it is, and it's like, and it's my brain, and it's very much like, I don't like the idea of being like, me. And like, which this project very much has. It's like, here I am, here's my brain, here's how I'm crazy, and it's, so it is hard finding that line. And then, like, thank God I was already close enough with Buddy to, like, ask him first. And then Madison, I sort of knew. We were, like, I would say we were friendly acquaintances, and Dulce was sort of Dulce Sloan was, like, our friend link, and she was like, you know, Madison went to theater school, and she's, like, directed all these shows, she's done a Fringe before.
Oh, I didn't realize she had done a Fringe before.
She had done Hollywood Fringe before. She has, like, production awards for it and stuff.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, and so, and that to me was, like, because she's someone I knew sort of distantly, I was like, that was scarier for me to go.
Right.
Because I think she's very funny. I respect her work, and I respect her opinion. And also I knew that she was someone who would give an opinion, which is very important.
And it's like a qualified opinion.
Yes, because it's like, there are 100 friends. Not 100. That's ridiculous. There are
thousands of people who'd be happy to just give you their opinions.
Well, and it's like, I could have asked several friends to direct the stage movement. Right. And I have very funny friends, but I'm like, I don't think it would have been as objective.
Right.
I think that most of them, because it would have been comedians, they're funny, but they're not as qualified.
Right.
And they would have tried to put too much of their voice into it. And Madison was amazing at, like, let's dissect this charactered version of you. Let's bring that to life. I mean, the amount of movement she put on stage, because had I done it with no director or, like, done my own stage direction, I think it would have just been a movie, and you're like, well, why is this woman sitting here? Which, like, and there was a lot of sitting, but she added so much physicality. The props, the whole monologue up top, I wouldn't have, like, thought to, like, she really helped me, like, bring out, because it is about me, but then...
That's incredible. I didn't realize, so I knew, because obviously I saw her name on the credits every day.
Oh, yeah.
And then I met her last night.
That stage direction,
like, that's a huge contribution.
It's huge because, like, what you see there is based on my real life experience, and a lot of the stuff you see in the video are very real, like, thoughts. But, like, it is a characterized version of myself. This woman you're seeing, I make her a little bit bigger than I was. I mean, like, I'm not gonna go into, like, full detail, I guess, but it's like I wasn't, like, outwardly losing my mind toward, like, the people I met at the meditation.
Yeah.
It wasn't all about this one guy, but it was like, how can we, like, she helped it have, like, an arc.
Yeah.
And a lot of her contributions ended up bleeding over into how I changed the video, or how I, like,
interesting, spiked
the video. And so, like, and that was scary because, like, this is a very raw thing, and I'm going to this woman who, like, I respect, I value her opinion, and, like, I don't know her that well, and it's like, for all I know, especially being an insecure person with low self-worth, is like, for all I know, she's like, what is this fucking idiot doing? And having someone whose opinion I respect, and she's like, this is great, and having her, like, help me build it, and, like, seeing, like, her be proud of the product then re-energized me, and it's just, like, and then there were a few other people calling in, like, editors. And, like...
So can you just run me down real quick, like, the different, like, positions that worked on it, right? Because you had that whole cast, because I think it's important for people to know that
what goes into it.
Did.
Yeah, because you see me up there, and it's like, if you wait for the credits, you go, like, oh, there are other people involved, but it's like...
Right.
It looks like, for all you know, I just, like, threw some clips together, and now I'm up there just moving along with them. I had... Buddy was exec producer and the director of the film, so he... oversaw all the film stuff. There's, like, a bunch of me monologuing. You see all these characters and, like, crazy moments. There's flashbacks. And so he oversaw all of that and helped with the vision for the arc of that, and, like, where we're going to put these things, and, like, how we build to this, to me, like, starting to go crazy at this meditation, because you have to, like, start, like, slow and then, like,
right.
build to this, like, sort of crescendo of, I fucking can't handle this. I'm trapped in my own mind. So he helped with that. And then Madison really came in on the stage direction. She was, like, director of movement and a producer. So she helped when we did the, like, live show here. And she was originally supposed to come to Edinburgh. Then because of her work schedule, she couldn't. And so, like, she was going to come around the time you came. And it just, like, you being there just to help. Just fucking, I can't even explain, having someone just help me put up the shit.
Aw,
was like, no, because I also have the mentality of, like, I can do it myself. I've literally moved myself from homes, like, probably 4 or 5 times. I've packed all my own shit and, like, refused help and, like, dragged things down and been like, I don't need anyone. And it's like, oh, it's okay to have someone help you. But what's interesting was how cohesively that all came together when we really didn't have that many sessions of the 3 of us. It was me sort of going back and forth between, like, here's Buddy's vision, and how can we make that work with Madison's vision? And then, like, when we did finally, like, get to meet up and, like, work together, it was, like, such an easy ebb and flow of people communicating and, like, being open, but also respectful in a way that's, like, everyone's like, I don't want to step on anyone's toes. Like, let's make sure we're all... And it was a very open format of, like, if someone's not happy, let's... Or if someone thinks something's a bad idea, like, it just created this environment where it was okay to go. I think a lot of times people get insecure about the idea of pitching or going, you know, actually, I think maybe we should try this. And it was just this freedom to hear everyone's voice, and I didn't feel like... So I usually feel like I'm the type of person to be so insecure that I maybe in, you know, a few years before, or, like, maybe just pre this meditation, would have been like, yeah, whatever you guys say.
Right.
Which is the thing I'm still working on of, like, oh, I don't have to ask for an opinion on every single thing. Mm-hmm. Just going, I'm going to do it this way. And then, like, seeing the feedback versus going, like, well, what do you think if I do this or that? Right. So they were huge in it. And then I have animations in it, which my roommate, Tony Solano, he's a fucking incredible animator. He looks
so good.
I mean,
really awesome.
the fact that he isn't like a known household name, like Matt Groening, or I don't even know how to say his name, but like Simpsons level, like
right.
It's like a household name, like that name I don't know. Like he will be, and I have all the confidence up. But he hooked me up. Like I paid such a low rate for like what I should have paid for those animations, and he got them all. I mean, we were on a rush schedule because I was like, here's what I need them by. Can you do it? What's the minimum I can pay you because I have no money? And he was so sweet, so respectful, and like just created these incredible pieces.
That worked really well.
Yeah, and when I'm telling you, like, he charged me like a tenth of what he should have charged me, like, and it, I will forever be thankful. And then it's like it's this ongoing list of people who like someday I will be on a project that has the budget. Right. That I can bring these people in and pay them because it's
a word in.
Because I'm never trying to like get one over on anybody, but I was like,
right.
What can you do that like you're not going to be like, go fuck yourself for even asking this? I was like, here's my budget. What can we do with it? Because if I had unlimited resources, I would of course always want to be like, what is what you deserve? And I'm like, I hated that I couldn't put what everyone deserved into it. It's like, I can go fuck myself with money, which is not a good mindset either, but it's like, when people are helping, I'm like, I am so sorry that I can't.
Which is honestly what makes you really awesome to do anything for, because there are so many people that I think take a totally different path of that conversation. And I think just being in any city where there's like a supply and demand thing like there is in LA, where people act like, oh, I'm giving you the opportunity to be a part of this thing.
You can showcase your editing skills. It's like, fuck you.
Yeah, and so it really is one of those things. And because I know that you genuinely mean it, like, it's amazing to me how many people I know who have the means but insist on, like, calling in favors and saying it'll be, like, good for your reel or resume or whatever.
Yeah.
Versus how many people I know who are on a budget and will still make an effort to pay creatives. And I think that it just makes a huge difference in what it says to me about a person, and honestly, like, what their quality of work will probably be based on, like, their character.
I agree, and I get very self-conscious about that because of, and maybe it's just a thing I worry about, but I don't think it's only in my head, because of the impact of social media.
Yeah. And,
like, the perception someone can have of you based on your social media. And, like, I put out an album and it went to number 1, and, like, I'm verified on a couple social networks. I have a decent amount of followers. And I get how from the outside, someone could go, she's probably doing very well financially.
Right.
But it's like, what it takes to get to number 1, algorithm-wise, and like...
Well, and how that actually impacts your bottom line, right?
Because and it's like, what did I put into this that I'm now being reimbursed before I'm making anything back? And like, it's an absurdly low amount of money.
And then, well, not only reimbursed, but then also to make money.
Yeah.
Right? Like, reimbursed, great, you're, like, covered the project, and then also it would be nice to have...
It's like I broke even.
So, speaking of money, I think, because I was at the Fringe with you, I saw... So, she had her show every day at 5:15.
Yes.
Which, to my understanding, you had to pay a submission fee.
Yes, everyone pays, like, a fee, but that covers... I did free Fringe.
Yeah.
So you pay, it's like a couple hundred, I want to say between £200 and £300. You pay that, and then your venue's covered. That's pretty much it.
But then the only money that she made on her show is when people came and then donated money.
Yeah, because like as a free Fringe show, you're not allowed to charge. So you just go like, if you like the show, you have to do like a bucket speech, give money. And some people were very generous, but it's also like, I was in a bumfuck location, so it's like sometimes...
She was very far out of, like...
Sometimes the audiences were, like, almost empty. A couple times they were literally empty. God, I wish you could have been there at the end, because I actually built... My last crowd was, like, full, and I was like, it was, like, cool seeing it build, awesome. And seeing... The one cool thing I will say about my location, well, and just what it taught me... Not even taught me, but showed me about myself, is that I wasn't aware how much I'd grown as a person in a way of, like, I think a year ago, 2 years ago, having those audiences fluctuate like that, I would have, like, taken it as a personal mark of, like, my worth. Despite the fact that there are literally thousands of shows going on, I'm off the map. Like, I'm way out in the middle of nowhere. I'm nobody in terms of, like, Fringe names or whatever. But,
and
like,
we're in another country.
Yes. But I was, like, very calm about it the whole time. Like, this is just how it goes. It's not a reflection of the quality of show. And I will say, everyone who came, specifically because of the location, I can say confidently, like, they really wanted to come to the show.
Yeah.
Because you had to walk.
You had to walk out of your way.
Like, 15 or 20 minutes, I think, out of the main...
And from what I noticed from some of the ones that were in a more central location is they had a lot of people that were just, like, drunk and wandering in.
Yeah.
And so... And with that type of show, it doesn't, like, resonate as well. Like, I think that worked for you well. So the other part of this is that then... obviously you want to do this anyways, but then Jessica also picked up spots on other shows throughout like the entire festival, at which some you got paid for and some you didn't.
No, so it's like you're doing your show and you're running to do like, I mean,
if you do stand-up, right? Like it's not the same for someone who's just doing straight theater and doesn't do stand-up. I don't think they have
probably
an
not
option.
the same thing. Yeah. But sorry, I'm like boogery.
Rude.
Yeah, no, so it's like I would say within like a week of being there, maybe 2 weeks, I was averaging like 2 or 3 spots a night. Mm-hmm. That's not an exaggeration, I think.
Yeah, that sounds right.
And so it's like you're doing your show, you're running around all these things, which most of you're getting paid like maybe a little bit for, or you're splitting a bucket, or you're getting nothing. And like that plus it's like...
And you don't know that always. Like for the requests you were getting, sometimes you didn't know if you were getting paid or not.
Yeah, and it's like,
and you have to have that awkward conversation, which I think is also important for people to know, to like...
And it shouldn't be awkward. That's the thing. That's a little on me, and I think on like how we as a culture like deal with money in general. But it's like, yeah, it shouldn't be. And I've since this festival has made me better about going like, what is the rate? Or like, I've gotten to a place where I'm comfortable enough with my abilities, and this is literally brand new, with my abilities being enough to get me consistent work, that like I can have a bottom line that I don't have to like flex on. That I can go like, it's this much or I'm not coming.
Yeah.
Which, like, by the way, is, like, so low relative to other comedians. But, like, yeah, having to go, like, is there pay? Are you paying me for the work I'm doing?
Right.
Which, like, in theory, you're like, well, you're still showcasing in front of a crowd. And it's like, well, if you're not making money, if there's no money being made, fine. If you're doing a bucket at the end and you're not splitting with the comics, get fucked. Like, are you out of your fucking mind?
Right.
Absolutely not. You're making money off of me and you're not giving me a little bit.
You're making money off just knowing what's funny and putting people there, which is, like, not...
Which is, like, there is a lot to be said about a skill set of, like, building a good lineup, but it's, like, you don't deserve all the money.
All the money for other people's work.
It's, like, you're a producer. Yes, you put the show together. You've assembled it. You're entitled to your...
Yeah, because that does take time and work and effort.
Yeah, and it's, like, a job I would never want to do. It fucking makes me crazy. I respect the fuck out of people who do it, but it's, like... Also pay the artist, but then also in theory you're going, well, I could be like, I'm not doing it because they're not paying me, but then that's a 300-seat venue that always sells out,
right?
Which
I mean,
was like, how many people could I get to come to my show that will then translate into fans, people at the show, and then money.
Which is, you know, and I think that that's also a super personal choice and like where you're at and stuff. But I think it's also just good for people to know the decision making like matrix that goes into those, and like that it is like that there's no hidden like pamphlet that someone like didn't give you.
Yeah, there's no easy, like everyone's just figuring it out as they go.
Right. And
when you realize that, it's kind of comforting because you're like, oh, no one here is like a secret expert. We're all just like flying by the seat of our pants. Great.
Yeah.
But it's like, you have to buy posters, you have to buy flyers. I bought way too many based on the recommended amount, but also other people they buy flyers and a lot of people pay flyers,
which are like people that hand out flyers,
like £10 to do like an hour before the show, whatever, like £10 an hour, £15 an hour. I ended up not doing that because I don't have foot traffic by my venue, and I was like, I don't think it's worth. And I'll never know because I didn't do it at all, and also I was gonna do it and then people fell through. It's a whole thing, but like,
I mean, we did do some flyering.
We flyered, yeah, but it's like, it wasn't worth it to me since my risk of making any money every show was so like unstable to put money in to then see no reward. Because I was like, if I had a venue where people were walking by,
right?
Because I was on some shows where people just got flyered and they went in, and that's great. And I'm like, that's the only people outside my venue are drunk people at a bus stop. Like, they're not coming to my show.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. And I mean, I think it being earlier in the day too, and I don't know, the whole flyering thing to me, I guess it also takes a specific type of person, you know, like if you're...
Yeah, if I'm going to pay a flyer, I want them to be really good at it, and a lot of people are not.
No, they're just handing flyers out. And on the receiving end of flyers, I've never once maybe 1 out of every 300 flyers I've ever received, I've gone, oh yeah, I think I'll go to this.
I didn't go, but I was like, I've thought about it.
Right? Yeah,
I've given it like a moment of consideration, and then I'm like, ooh, probably not.
Yeah, and so, I mean, I think you made the right choice by not doing that, because it probably wouldn't have been a good investment of,
but it's like,
and time.
Depends on the show, depends on...
Yeah.
It's a choice you have to make. But it's like, the amount of money I spent going there, just to even like try to break... Well, that's the thing too, is that I worry because I'm doing well as far as being noticed for my comedy. The show was well received by the people who saw it. Mm-hmm. And it's like, again, with the like keeping a low overhead versus making money, but I could see how I get worried that because I have enough of a social media presence and I have enough little just like checkmark things of things that have gone well in my career that I could go, I don't really have much of a budget, but would you be willing to? And I could, in theory, like, I worry that the other person's like, go fuck yourself. Like, they think I'm secretly sitting on this hidden pile of money that I don't have. But it's like, that's my own self-conscious thing that I have to just be like, look at if they're going to believe me or not. But it's like...
Yeah, and you know, some people are, I mean, I just think of the variety of ways I hear people interpret the same message.
Yeah.
That I'm kind of like, yeah, well, if that's your mentality, that's just your mentality. And like, I know that I'm coming from a good place.
Yeah, it's like, I can't control you. And that's pretty interesting, is letting go of like, I can't worry that you might think I'm lying about.
Yeah, trying to like pull one over when it's like, I'm just trying to figure it out.
Yeah, it's like, I'm just trying to like get this done, but also like not get evicted.
Definitely. Are there any things that you feel like you wish someone would have told you about the Fringe before you did it?
I saw a couple comics do this. They came over this year for like a week to scout venues, which I thought was interesting. I wish someone would have pitched that idea to me, although knowing me, don't know if I would have done it. Like, because I would have been like, well, mostly because of my financial situation. I'd been like, I'm not spending money to see if I want to, like...
Right.
I don't have, let me go for a week and gallivant at these venues. Right. And see which one I like. I'm like, no, I have to save that money for when I actually go.
Yeah.
But I did like that. The flyer thing I didn't know ahead of time. I wish I would have just had more knowledge about it. But, again, I don't know if it would have changed anything. I'm trying to think. I don't know.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
So where can people find you online?
At JMS Comedy. That's all my social media.
Yeah.
Twitter, Instagram, Facebook.
And then she also has a great podcast.
I do. It's called Ignorance is Blessed. Ignorance is #blessed. Also, there was a couple more people really quick.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
No, it's okay. I went on a tangent, but, like, there were 2 other people who came in and edited last minute. One was a friend of Buddy's, who I barely knew. One, at the time, I barely knew. We're friends now. He's, like a partner with my roommate who's an animator. They, like, do shit together. And I posted a status, and he tagged him, and he, like... came and sat with me. Is Eric Friedman. He sat with me for like...
Who's also a comedian, right?
Yeah, he's also a comedian. He sat with me for like 3 days straight. I barely knew this guy. I like knew him very briefly, like loosely, yes, through my roommate. I was in the height of like mania, going like, this project's not gonna work. I was like a total breakdown. He's editing these videos of me. I'm having a breakdown while I'm having to sit next to him, watching him edit videos of me having a breakdown. Like, and then I'm having a breakdown about the breakdown. And he was just so kind and like patient and was just like, it's no big deal. I like gave him a little bit of money and he was like so happy to do it and so flexible. And I was like, I could not have done it without him. Shola, who I fucking can't remember his last name because it was so last minute. I was manic. Buddy's friend came in and Buddy was like, I'll pay him. You can pay me back later. So it was like a thing where I was like, I don't have any, I have nothing. My ex-boyfriend made a couple graphics for me. He made a whole slideshow of dicks.
Oh, that's right.
Connor McSpadden. And then...
What a hero.
A group of female comedians. My friend Dana, there was only one other part in the entire thing that was actually somebody else, like, that you could see visually. And it was my friend Dana doing basically a character, sort of a character that she already does. But, like, a bunch of female comedians came and sat in to make, like, a meditation background or, like, just a setting for a couple of the clips. My roommate Jen sat in and just helped feed me lines for some of it. Like... It's just, you see this product and you're like, wow, a one-woman show. And I don't want to poo-poo on other one-woman shows because I'm sure there are plenty that are great that were completely one woman, but like this was like it takes a village, and it's mostly half those people were just. I had people come in when I was filming by myself, 3 different comic friends who did nothing except like make sure the camera and sound were on, and that was my own neuroses. I could have done it myself, but having them just go like, "Great job, this is so funny, I can't wait to see the product," was so immensely helpful that I was like, "Okay, I'm gonna be fine." Anyway, that's
yeah. No, I think that's great, and like, I think
just
that
like
is
I want to
also,
make sure I shout people out.
Oh, for sure. No, and I think that speaks volumes to 2 things. Like, one, as when you're doing a creative endeavor, like making yourself vulnerable to the right people, not to everybody. You know, 'cause I think that a lot of good creative work does get watered down by too many opinions.
Yes,
but letting the right people in at the
right moments.
time.
Yeah. Also, just having my manager Molly Hurwitz, shout out, but like just having her go like, "No, don't quit." I was like, I don't know, it's too much, and her going like, "I feel like you really care about this project a lot. Maybe that's why you're trying to quit. Maybe you should reconsider that." And I'm like, "Oh, thank God."
Yeah. Oh, this is what caring about something feels like.
Yeah, having someone go like, "It's like you're good. Like keep going."
Yeah, that is awesome, and that's the other thing is like on the other side of when you know that your friends are working on a project. It's, I mean, of course, the check-ins are always awesome of somebody going like, "Hey, how's it going?" Whatever. Also, just going like letting people know that you think, if you think this, that it's cool and great and positive that they're working on stuff. And on that note, I do honestly really recommend for anybody like struggling with that kind of like roller coaster. Aisha Tyler's podcast in general, I don't even think she does it anymore. They're just old episodes that I listen to a lot.
I love that.
And it's called Girl on Guy. I went and just paid the like $50 to like get it on the app so I had access to all the episodes.
Oh, I love that.
And it's been so therapeutic. Like, she talks to so many incredible people, but then she's also on Tim Ferriss's podcast, and she talks about, on that particular episode, about like the pain in creativity and then working through it and applying that pain to like grow in your creativity.
Yeah, because it's easy to stop. It's easy to hit a wall where you're like, this is...
Yes.
I mean, when you're really pouring like a real life experience into something, or like you care about it, you hit walls where you're like, I don't want to do this because this was the first project I think I completed where it was like 100% myself. Like, I put out my album. It's all like jokes I wrote. Some of them are very personal. Some of them are just very silly. And I'm very proud of my album. It did very well as far as like iTunes or whatever.
Which is called, sorry. What is
it's called Please Don't Leave Me. And
it's hysterical.
I get good feedback on it, but arguably even some of those jokes were not fully fleshed out. Like, they were done enough for the album, but there's still been times where like, I could have added this, I could have added that. And so there's a little bit of a safety net in there. And I was kind of like, I want to move past these jokes I've written because that's who I was when I wrote them, but I feel like I've grown into another person, so I don't want to tell them anymore. And it was like a time capsule. But this was a thing where I like poured myself into it, and it's like, oh, if people don't like this, I don't know if I can handle that.
Well,
and that made me realize a lot about opportunities I just haven't taken or really dove into in other aspects of stand-up, where I'm like, oh, I haven't really tried, because I'm like, what if I really try and then and you hate me?
No, it's I'm powering through that feeling right now.
Yes.
So my last question, and I'm asking this across guests until I think of a better question or decide this one is annoying, is what is like something like kind of a finished product that you would like to know the behind the scenes of, or like hear from somebody on?
My God, I'm trying to think. What do I?
It could be anything. Do you want some inspirational notes of like the things that other people have said? Or
yes,
no?
Maybe.
Okay, so Matt, who is on it, he was like behind the scenes of like the real life kind of like real deal like executive, like corporate executive, like that kind of thing. He like that was like his thing. And then,
like what the behind the scenes? Oh, so like what is the thing I would like to?
Yeah, for like this type of interview.
Oh, of course, that's what you're asking. I was just thinking of specific creative projects, so I was going like movies, books.
Oh no,
and it
literally
doesn't have
anything.
To be.
It could literally be like the behind the scenes of how like your toothbrush is made.
Oh wow, that's kind of fun.
Thanks.
Oh my gosh, it's like the Cheesecake Factory menu. There's too many options. The Cheesecake Factory. No,
and their ads drives me nuts. Ads and menus makes my brain implode.
I mean, I think I would like to know, I mean, I'm like morbid. I was like, I'd like to know the behind the scenes of like a mortician, yeah, or like a funeral director.
I have thought about this deeply and intensely.
Because I'm like, how the fuck did you end up?
And like when I think a lot about everyone makes mistakes because we're all humans, and like the mistakes that you make if you're having an off day as a funeral home director.
Yeah. Ugh. Can like traumatize people. I mean, like doctors.
I thought you were saying could ruin a life.
It could ruin a death. How do you ruined a death?
Like when doctors make mistakes, like when I hear about a doctor like sewing up a rag in somebody,
but
or
the
whatever.
fact that's always like called like it's a practice, and I was like, that's horrifying. But I kind of like that because it's like in theory, most of what we're doing, like we all have this idea that we'd grow up, become an adult, and just suddenly know. Yeah. And the more you realize that, like, even the people who seem confident, they're just better at faking it. Like, yeah. For the most part.
And we only believe that they're good at things because they seem confident.
Like, you have to, like, dedicate all your time to one specific thing and, like, almost, like, robotically shut off to ever really be an expert. Yeah. You know what I mean? But...
And to keep growing in that. Like, it's... So, is mortician really your answer?
Yeah, that's or, like, funeral director.
Funeral home director.
Because it's, like... Yeah.
Oh, that would be... Yeah. Eternal Valley is not too far from here.
That's interesting.
Yeah. No,
I would love that. And it's like now I want to do my own interview on it too.
You can.
Yeah, or like...
Can we cross-interview somebody? Like it's a...
You know what I really wanted to do, like but like I couldn't... I just didn't have the time to set it up. Not that they would have gone for it, but like there was a specific hospital in Zurich. Mm-hmm. I forget the name of the company. Dignitas.
Okay.
And they are... a company, they're dedicated to assisted suicide.
Yeah.
And I think about that constantly because nobody wants to talk about it because they're like, you can't.
What do you mean who doesn't want to? I think it's.
I mean, yeah, but I feel like people go like, you know, there's like the whole like American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, which I've given a ton of money to, and then I have moments where I'm like, what is this really for? A number that like a person who's suicidal is going to be like, I'm not calling your fucking number. Like, if you want to not kill yourself, in theory, it's like, but you also know about those resources. And it's like putting stuff out there to, I still advocate for it 100%, but like the amount of guilt friends of suicide victims feel when it's like, I've hit a place with enough friends who have died of suicide where I go like, yeah, it sucks, but you kind of have to go like, it's very unlikely there's something you could have done. I mean, I have it in a bit where I'm like, when people are like, if only I'd said something, and it's like, wow, how confident.
I mean, it's true. There are some people that I have had to, that, you know, have committed suicide in my life who I care about deeply, that I've had to go like, you know what, I think...
You have to let go of that.
And go like, you know what, with them it was a matter of when. Yeah. And just knowing those people deeply and knowing that it had been on their mind for a long time and it was something they'd battled with for like a decade, that I'm kind of like, yeah, there's nothing. Like, if you set your mind to something, whatever that is...
Whatever it may... If you can dream it, you can achieve it. But like... Well, yeah, and the amount of people who go like, suicide is selfish, and you go like, well, have you ever been suicidal? Because it's pretty selfish of you to be like, how dare you want to not feel that way?
Right, yeah. Well, and especially if you're at the end of your own life. No, I think that's a really awesome one.
Well, yeah. And
race you to it.
Well, I mean...
I'm closer to Oregon.
It's so fascinating because it's like, yeah, well, because there's this whole concept of like, oh, if you're old enough or you're terminally ill, it's like, well, why is that person of sound enough mind? Why is it that if I'm 90 years old, you think I'm now fit to decide whether or not it is okay for me to keep living? But if I'm...
But that also says...
But if I'm 30 and I'm like, well, I just feel like I don't want to live anymore, you're like, but it's like where... I would just love to talk to them because they do such a thorough process of, is this actually... You're not reacting. It's like, well, how do you... I'm curious how they determine
at what age
that.
And like all the factors that go into even starting that process. That's a really
It's like, why are you the authority on whether or not I should be the authority on whether or not my life should keep going?
Godspeed to us both trying to find an outgoing person in funeral home directory.
Yeah, that it's like also it's like who has most of those people probably don't have good interview personalities. But maybe that's an unfair assumption.
If you're listening and you know someone,
send them our way.
Yes, please. All right. Thank you so much for being on.
Thanks
I really appreciate it. And thanks for listening.
Yay.
Thanks again for listening to BTS Podcast. Please share this with the people that you know who may like this podcast. It would be really appreciated. Use hashtag BTS Podcast if you're sharing it on social. I would appreciate the support. listen to Jessica's podcast. It is awesome. It's called Ignorance is #blessed. She's super funny and has on a variety of guests, typically comedians with a variety of backgrounds. They're all really, really great. I have a blast listening to her podcast. I was lucky enough to be a guest on it quite some time ago now. The episode is called How to Be a Social Media Millennial-ier, I think is what she called it. It was a really good time. So go ahead and give that a listen. Follow her. Go see her live sometime. She's incredible. Her physical comedy is just out of this world. She's really, really great. Other ways you can support this podcast are by subscribing to my newsletter. It's called Ask a Millennial. It's basically exactly what it sounds like. It is me, a millennial, answering questions, sharing creative highlights, sharing different marketing successes and reports that I've dug into. I do social media strategy for companies, and so I'm always really interested in sharing what is going on in the social realm. It's really helpful if you are managing a team and just want something a little bit different and edgy than what is often shared across the prominent media types like Adweek and stuff like that. It's also really great if you are fresh out of college and looking for some inspiration in your career, or if you're a small business owner. I think there's a variety of different people that have given me feedback about what they like about it. So please do go and subscribe to that if that sounds interesting to you in the least. You can also support this podcast by subscribing, rating, reviewing. Podcasters do not ask you to do that because we have fun asking for it. It's because it really, really helps us just be successful with our podcast. It makes a difference. So please take a moment out of your day, whether you are sitting on the toilet, whether you're on the bus, whatever. It just takes a second. Please go subscribe, rate, and review. It's greatly, greatly appreciated. I just want to give a big shout out to Hotel Tonight. I'm a huge fan. Hotel Tonight is awesome for last-minute hotel bookings at really quality hotels with a discount. It's really great. Use LCook61 on your first Hotel Tonight booking to save. And a quick plug for Soothe. Soothe is a service for in-home massages, and it's really, really incredible. I'm a huge fan. When I have the time and budget and whatever, I love to be able to book a massage. They come to your house or your Airbnb or your hotel or whatever. It is a great way to unwind. There's been some interviews I've listened to with people who are big advocates for massages, not just for the relaxation purpose, but it's also super therapeutic. It helps, I don't know, I guess it helps me a lot. Just think of new ideas. I'm a weirdo and keep a notepad by me when I'm getting a massage, so I can just reach over and jot down the different things that come to mind. I've worked through a lot of emotional stuff as well as had really great just creative ideas while getting massages. So it is, in my opinion, well worth the investment. Sometimes even better than a good night's sleep is a massage, especially if you're on the road traveling. Thank you again for listening to BTS Podcast. Please feel free to share what you want to hear the behind the scenes of. I would love to know what you're interested in. It helps not only inspire different ideas for me, but also sometimes even support ones that I may have thought of and then sort of cast aside. So if there's anything you're interested or any particular person you're interested in hearing from, please do shoot me a Twitter or Instagram DM. If you're only on Facebook, that works too. Just know that I'm not ignoring you and that I am not great at checking my Facebook messages. So Twitter or Instagram messages are preferred. I would love to hear what you have to say. Thanks again.